somewhere else, came to this planet and began to build a kingdom or a breakaway civilization on Earth. So that clears up the Anunnaki. They're not just one race of people from exactly only one location. These people came from multiple locations. And I'm going to be talking about this in my new TV series that's coming out very soon about the Anunnaki. Another thing is, well, where did they come from? Well, when you look into these ancient texts, tablet scriptures, cylinder scrolls, and papyruses, you begin to realize they all seem to come from one central location in the sky, and that's the Pleiadian star system.
I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion, Billy Carson.
All right. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Man, for whatever reason, brother, every time you and I talk, the algorithm of YouTube really likes it because we've hit like over, I think both of our conversations have hit over 1.5 million and growing. Amazing.
That's, listen, you know, when you have something that catches the algorithm, that means even the algorithm wants to know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
AI's like, I need to add this to my database.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of things in our last conversations, but in this conversation, man, I really wanted to go into something that I've really never gone deep into. And it's something that fascinates me tremendously. And there's so much historical evidence for it, is the concept of the Anunnaki, which if you can explain to people what the Anunnaki is, and then explain not only from one culture, but how the concept of the Anunnaki just transcends cultures around the world. In such a way that it cannot really be ignored. There's something there. What that is, I don't know. So can you explain what the Anunnaki is to people who never
Absolutely. Heard? And I'm glad you asked this question because a lot of people get confused about who and what the Anunnaki actually are. They tend to want to give the Anunnaki a specific gender or race in a lot of cases, but it's not. Anunnaki, the term, it's a term, it's not a name. The term Anunnaki is actually a generalized term to describe beings that are not from Earth. Right. So if you and I travel to another solar system, or maybe even to Mars, and we met Martians, and they say, "Hey guys, where are you from?" We're not going to say Miami, right? My name is Billy Carson, and I'm a male from Miami, Florida. They're going to be like, "Who?" We're just going to say Earthlings. And so the term Anunnaki, the way it was defined by the Sumerians, it was that it's a generalized term of those who came from heaven to earth. And that term has made it into many other texts in various alterations. Even in the Bible, it says they call them the Anak, the A-N-A-K. And they're calling these people megalithic giants. They say that these people are so big that we were grasshoppers in their eyesight. That's in the Bible. In ancient Egypt, they call them the Nitiru. They say that the gods who came from heaven to earth, same exact terminology, and turned mud into a kingdom. Now, when you look deeper into where these people came from, you start to go through a lot of various different texts, and you begin to realize it's not just one group of people that came from one planet. It appears to be a group of people that came from multiple planets, even multiple solar systems, according to the ancient text, not according to Billy Carson. So you dig deeper into this, you start looking at the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation from the Sumerian tales, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Atrahasis, and then the myth of Adapa, and that's also Sumerian. But then you move into some of the other texts, like the Indian texts, like the Mahabharata, the Indian Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and some of these other texts, you begin to realize, whoa, the stories are also linking up. And the thing between all these different stories, Egyptian Book of the Dead and the North American indigenous tribes of the Americas, even their historical information and the Aboriginals' historical information all point to the same thing. Beings from somewhere else came to this planet and began to build a kingdom or a breakaway civilization on Earth. So that clears up the Anunnaki. They're not just one race of people from exactly only one location. These people came from multiple locations. And I'm going to be talking about this in my new TV series that's coming out very soon about the Anunnaki. Another thing is, well, where did they come from? Well, when you look into these ancient texts, tablet scriptures, cylinder scrolls, and papyruses, you begin to realize they all seem to come from one central location in the sky, and that's the Pleiadian star system. As a matter of fact, 70% of ancient artifacts that exist that connect to the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, I should say, the ancient people of Kemet, really, the ancient Sumerians from Mesopotamia, the ancient people throughout that came and lived throughout Turkey and Syria and all these places, and even down into the parts of the Americas and South America, which used to be Mesoamerica, they all have, most of them have, a depiction of the Pleiadian star system etched into the actual stone or scripture or writing or artwork or whatever's been left behind. And then you look at the Aboriginals, their verbal handed down history for thousands of years. I went for a walkabout in Australia about maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, documented, it's online. They say that they were seated on this planet by the Pleiadians. And then they showed me Pleiadian hieroglyphs, which I took a lot of documentation of out there in the wilderness on the walkabout. And these glyphs have never been deciphered by anybody on Earth as to date. And we know that because of the patina inside the glyphs, you can date the age of when they approximately were carved, comes out to be about 5,000 years. There's something to this story about these beings coming from another place to this planet, and all these cultures say that there was an ancient galactic war. There was a war in a part of the sky way above what they call the heavens. And in this area, which I believe is the Pleiades, based on circumstantial evidence, there were so many wars going on, people spread out and left that region of the sky and went to other star systems like Orion, Aldebaran, Sirius, A, B, and C, and various other star systems to create what we call breakaway civilizations in modern terms. Earth was one of these breakaway civilizations, in my personal opinion, where these Anunnaki, these were really just advanced beings, another form of a Homo sapien, just like us. We look like them, and they look like us. The only distinguishing features were the fact that they had larger skulls, bigger bones, bigger bodies, according to the accounts of the ancient texts. And so that's what they are. They're actually a multiracial, multi-species hominid, bilateral, bipedal hominid that hail originally, in my opinion, from the Pleiadian. And due to that war breaking out there, they had something in there called the Brahma-Honda weapon, which can destroy any man on 3 worlds. So we're talking about, the Death Star, planets blowing up, moons blowing up. Imagine what would happen if somebody came and blew up Mars, all that debris floating around our solar system. We would want to get off of Earth because Earth is going to get hit by a big chunk at some point. And so now imagine if we had the capability or the technology, some of us, not all of us, unfortunately, to get into a ship and take off and leave and go somewhere else. This is, in my opinion, what happened in the ancient past and created so many different breakaway civilizations throughout not only our solar system, but many solar systems that exist in the Milky Way galaxy.
So let me ask you this, though. I just had Matt LaCroix on, who's a good friend of yours, and we're talking about how our human timeline has shifted from this 4,000 to 6,000 year timeline that mainstream has been touting since essentially the 1800s almost. And then if you want to go into the Bible, 5,000 years and whatever that is. But now there's more archaeological proof that our timeline is not only 10,000 years or 12,000 years, which is what a lot of people are saying now because of the Younger Dryas and the archaeological evidence that's happening. But now there's even evidence that's pushing that timeline back 20, 30, 40, even a couple 100,000 years back. At what point did the Anunnaki come? Or do they continue to recome when we destroy ourselves, or there's something that kind of resets our civilization, and do they come back in? Or like, so at what point do you know, at least that you've learned?
Great question, phenomenal question. So there's 2 parts to this too. So I'm gonna take it a little slow because I want people to really grasp what I'm about to tell them. The first part is when you research the Enuma Elish, you discover the full creation of this solar system in a way that is explained is actually very, very scientific based on astrophysics. Astrophysics will back up what's in the Enuma Elish because they're talking about gravitational fields, planets and moons being captured by fields, collisions between planets and moons. And in one of these instances, there was a planet named Tiamat. We had Mercury, Venus, and then you had Tiamat. You didn't have Earth and you didn't have Mars per se. Mars was a habitable moon of Tiamat. It orbited Tiamat. So was our current moon. It used to orbit Tiamat, according to these ancient texts. Tiamat had a major collision as this whole coalescing was going on and gravitational fields interacting and huge rogue planets soaring through the solar system collided. It says that Nibiru, it says that a satellite of Nibiru, which is probably a moon, collided with Tiamat. Tiamat, according to the text, was one of the most beautiful planets that exists. It said that when it had it was a water-bearing planet with land and life, and that when the sun shined on it, it rivaled the sun's glory. This is how beautiful it was. Now, think about this for a second. Think about that statement I just made about a planet that used to exist in our solar system before it got collided into and turned into the asteroid belt. Who in the world could have made that statement because they didn't take it from the perspective of Earth? Because the Earth didn't exist at that time. We're going back a very long time ago. And in this text, it talks about the fact that a huge chunk broke away from that collision and that explosion and taking the water, taking the organic life and everything else with it and recoalesced as the Earth, moving into the 3rd position from the sun, forcing Venus back gravitationally, forcing Mercury in closer to the sun to get it where it's at now, and tagging along with it gravitationally, Lamu, or the moon that's now captured by us. And so Mars got slung into a very strange elliptical orbit. And when you analyze Mars's orbit through astrophysics, you discover even now mainstream astrophysicists are saying it used to orbit something else. It wasn't always a single planet based on its orbital cycle and its angle of orbit around the sun. It's a weird, strange orbit. So they know that it was released and it captured its own orbit. Another piece of evidence is the fact that one side of Mars is completely charged, the other side is completely smooth. The side that was facing Tiamat at the time of the collision took the brunt of the impact, and they also discovered that Mars's equator shifted 45 degrees. The weight and the mass of the land mass hitting it from the explosion of Tiamat forced it almost on its side and gave it a global flood, which we can see evidence of today when we look at a lot of the Mars rover images. So this is part one. So Earth itself is a side effect of a collision that happened millions of years ago that brought, the land, also life, and even some of these ancient artifacts that we discover 400 and 500 million years down in these mines. Those weren't created on Earth. Those were created when Earth was part of Tiamat. So that's part one. So now we shift and say, okay, well, when did they get here? So as you continue to dig through these texts, you discover approximately around 450,000 years ago, they landed on this planet. Now, this planet had recoalesced, it had healed, it had been prosperous. There's thriving life all over the planet at the time that they got here. And an existing hominid, which would have been our cousins. Now, according to other verbal histories handed down, like, for example, the Aboriginals and the North American indigenous tribes, they say that we were seeded. So after the planet recoalesced, somebody from somewhere brought us and put us here. This is what's been said and left behind. And so they come here, but they come here in a time when we were in a fallen state. In other words, it seems as if we had risen up to a decent level of civilization, and at some point that cycle took over, we collapsed again. The Anunnaki accidentally stumbled across this planet at a time when we were back in the Stone Ages all over again, due to a geological disaster, potentially. And so about 450,000 years ago, they came here, but they began to create a breakaway civilization, not using human beings, we weren't human beings at the time, or whatever we were, our cousins, not utilizing that existing hominid as a slave or a worker person at all, not even interacting with them. It doesn't happen until approximately 200,000 years ago in the Epic of Atrahasis, where the story picks up that the Igigi, which were the working class Anunnaki, got tired of laboring on Mars and on Earth, doing a lot of the work almost as if they were being enslaved. And they decided to come together and have a coup against the gods of Earth, which would have been Anu, Enki, and Enlil. And so they encircled their campus in Africa, in South Africa, actually, at a place called Adam's Calendar, which has been discovered to be one of the oldest gold mines on Earth that date back to when? 200,000 years ago. So they go to Adam's Calendar, they go to this campus that they're living in, they encircle it, and they get ready to go to war against them. And so Enki has an idea to try to stop this war. He said, listen, I have an idea. There's an existing being on this planet. We can add our essence to it, and we can get it to do the work for us. In another tablet, it kind of talks about, they even debated on fashioning beings, making people, in other words, cyborgs or robots or whatever. But in some other conversation, which a little bit of the stone is missing, it continues to kind of say, well, we tried this on our home planet and it was forbidden because it was like they can then take over. They can outnumber us and take over. We have no control. So they probably came into a situation with AI a long time ago. So they decided to take us, genetically modify us, disconnect some of our DNA, make it into quote unquote junk DNA, shrink our pineal glands, do some genetic modification and tinkering with the worship gene that we know for a fact has been added into the genome, and so forth, splice gene number 2, put telomere caps on them, and make us into the worker beings for them. An agreement was made, and that's exactly what they did. And so they began to utilize us to do the work for them. And so in this particular situation, that thwarted the war at that time, but the war ended up happening anyway, many tens of thousands of years later. But we began to become the slave race. The entire planet, all Homo sapiens became the slave race for these Anunnaki people. And we did the work because we thought we were working for the gods. They masqueraded as gods. And so we did the work as slaves, not even knowing that we were truly slaves, which is pretty interesting. And this is how they manipulated us. Over time, they built a very high level civilization, and evidence of this civilization is called the Atlantean civilization. Atlantis was not just a ring city in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That was just one capital of many capitals that existed around the entire planet. Every single person on Earth right now is standing and sitting directly on top of Atlantis. They created a global civilization here on this planet called Atlantis. And we know this because we have records like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which he says, I'm a son of Atlantis. We know his father was Enki. And so this civilization that they built was high tech. And after a massive catastrophe happened and created a great flood, it destroyed a lot of the stuff and structures. But after some time, they began to rebuild civilization again. But this time they took it from being the hub in Iraq, which is Mesopotamia, and moved it over to ancient Kemet, as we know today is Egypt.
So why is it that, or I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, why is the Sumerians so known with the Anunnaki? Or am I incorrect in saying that? Like, because a lot of the Anunnaki information that's comes from ancient Sumerian texts. Is that fair? Is that true?
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yes. You see, they were called different names around the planet. So at the time of the Sumerian rise of Sumerian civilization, which rose up out of the dust in the blink of an eye, shouldn't have happened. They had help. they wrote a lot of tablets. Just tens of thousands of tablets have evidence that these people were here. Not only the evidence that written down in a cuneiform tablets, but also cylinder scrolls that were left behind, actually depicting these beings and what they actually look like. Even star systems and star charts and paths to take to get specific star systems were all left behind. So these are in actual museums like the British Museum and the Ashmolean Museum. The evidence that they were here, even their lifespans, the evidence of them being here in the King's List at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, dictating the years of reign of some of these kings, 28,800 years, 14,000, 600 years, and all these crazy numbers, and how they ruled over us. Also, the rise and fall of even their civilizations or their kingships. And then after the flood, they said, you know what? We're going to now have a liaison between us and the humans. So we'll create kings or pharaohs or whatever they call it in those particular regions. And in the case of ancient Kemet, for example, they would create a king, which much later became called a pharaoh. That person would have to be half human, half Anunnaki, and that would be the bloodline liaison between them communicating with the masses. And so that was the next path that they took. Now, in Egypt, they called them the Netiru. That's what they call them in ancient Kemet. That's the name that kind of stuck. The Netters also became a slightly newer version, still ancient, but still newer, the Netters. And the Netters are depicted as, all the ancient Egyptian gods, people that supposedly, according to them, are not from Earth. It's the same theme that happens over and over again. Even Yeshua, aka Jesus, I am not from Earth.
Did you know that there is a hidden message in the ancient Egyptian symbol, the Eye of Horus? Despite existing over 3,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians had advanced knowledge of the solar system, mathematics.
He says it in the Bible many times. Everywhere you look, it's always people who are not from here. And so, but the evidence that they were here is left all around, because when you look at the Emerald Tablets, Thoth is told by his father to go to the land of Kem and rebuild the civilization. In other words, they knew it was at a high level because they said they're going to rebuild it. And once they rebuilt the land of Kem, he told the crew that went there with him, he said, now you spread out around the world and duplicate what we did here. So they then went to every major continent and duplicated and rebuilt civilization all over the globe, utilizing the same blueprint, the same technology, the same education, the same teaching system to people. And they went around the planet and duplicated what they did there. This is why no matter where you go on the planet, you'll see the same building techniques. Peru, China, Russia, Egypt. It doesn't matter where you go. You're going to see these same megalithic blocks built in the same way, interlocking technique, Cambodia, where I just came from. You're going to find pyramids every single place on the planet. Why? Because they had one blueprint, one master architect. The only thing you'll find slightly different is the motif or the artistic design slightly, but overall, you'll find the same exact thing no matter where you go on the planet. Because these people affected and interacted and engaged human beings around the entire globe and put them to work all around the globe to build, in this case, to rebuild their civilization. We're talking about a very, very long time ago, because the Emerald Tablets are approximately 36 to 38,000 years old. And then Thoth ruled over the land of Kem, according to the ancient Egyptians, for 16,000 years by himself, one man. So we know that, man, the story goes way further back than 5, 6, 7,000 years. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of years. And if you want genetic evidence, just look at Homo sapiens sapien, us. We know that about 200,000 years ago, according to geneticists, we were genetically modified. Chromosome number 2 was taken out, fused together, and telomere caps were put on each end. And we know this is a fact, and it shortened our lifespans to about 120 years max. This was discovered by scientists at Harvard University. But the Sumerian tablets also say this happened, this change happened around 200,000 years ago. So we know that the tablets are aligning with modern genetics. So you have to almost open your eye and say, man, this can't be a coincidence,
So Billy, throughout history, we've seen that, especially like in the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of these gods that they worshipped and spoke about had different color skin, the elongated skulls that have been found around the world. There's these kind of little breadcrumbs to the Anunnaki that are kind of undeniable. Are there other historical or ancient gods that could be equated to the Anunnaki? And besides, I mean, obviously, blue-skinned giants in the Bhagavad Gita is very easy; is a pretty straight line. But are there other historical or ancient figures that we can connect to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So their names have been changed over time. So over the eons, or names keep getting changed, but a lot of the times it's the same people. And you hit it on the head. Something I'm glad you brought this up. So some of the gods of the Indian texts, they're blue, not because they were saying it was a metaphor or that it was a coincidence. No, these were blue people. Their skin had a bluish haze to it or a bluish tint to it. And these were part of the Anunnaki people. Again, proving that it wasn't just one specific race of people. Some of these people were black or dark-skinned, right? They even call them some black-faced in the Sumerian tablets. Some of these beings were Anunnaki, but they had African features, but they were fair skinned with blonde hair and blue eyes. So it's almost like a person that maybe is like a mulatto or has that, as an albino, or maybe that's where the gene comes from. Who knows? And then you had people that were also resembled Caucasians and that were giants with red hair, right? So you see these accounts, and then you had, of course, you have the red man, which is coming out of the indigenous stories from the Lakota, the Hopi, and all these other tribes out of the Americas. These giants, and no matter where you go, you find the same story. You find a particular type of a being ruling over people that kind of resemble them. Now, this is interesting. I started looking into this, and I said, could race be a result of a particular gene from the people that ruled over a region of us on the planet? And here's what I found out. Scientists, geneticists discovered that there's a 2% variance in genes between races. In other words, what makes me a person that's dark-skinned with more melanin in my skin than you, who's more fair-skinned with slightly less melanin in your skin, is not because my ancestors, were in the Sahara Desert, working in the desert underneath the hot sun all day.
Mhm.
And that's what they teach you in school. The reason why my skin is this way is because I'm genetically branded, and so are you. You're genetically branded, and so are the indigenous peoples of all the other continents on the planet. We're genetically branded by why? The person who ruled over us gave us a brand, just like they brand a cow. Say, oh, that's Farmer Jim's cow. Don't touch them. You see the brand right there? Well, when these people spread out around the planet to rule over different regions of the planet, they genetically branded the people they ruled over to resemble them. And that's why Asians look different, and Caucasians and Africans and the red man, indigenous tribes of the Americas and the Aboriginals all look different, but all are still Homo sapiens. It's because there's a genetic branding. They said that a 2% variance would take multi-millions of years to happen in natural evolution, and yet it only happened in 200,000 years. So it tells us something interesting, that this is an artificial mutation that was done on purpose to create a specific group or specific races or groups of people that resembled, let us make man in our image, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. That sounds familiar, sir. That sounds that sounds familiar. So you've used this word a few times in this conversation, and it was something I actually was going to talk to you about: giants.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this idea of creatures that were bigger than us, as far as our standard, a big man is, Shaq is what, 7'1", 7'2", something like that. That's at the top of the spectrum. There are, I think, somebody bigger than him, but generally speaking, that continue to live. That's the top of the height level, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also in the ancient text talks about giants who were twice that size, 3 times the size. And as you mentioned earlier, the Anunnaki might have been much larger than we were. And for most of history, that is considered more mythology, and they don't really take it seriously because they can't see it through any other lens besides the lens that they have of their point of view. So what does the ancient scriptures talk about, and the ancient texts talk about giants? Is this true? Is it not true? Where did they come from? What is it?
Well, when you look at the text, it's pretty clear. There were people here that were massive at one point. Over time, as these people made it, their offspring got shorter and shorter and shorter, or smaller and smaller. Just like, for example, before I answer the full question, if you and I travel to Mars, I'm 6'4". I'm not sure how tall you are. But if we traveled to Mars and, we stayed there for some time, first of all, when we landed on Mars, we would be superhumans. I would be able to pick up a boulder and throw it. You'd be able to pick up a boulder and fling it across the room. We'd be able to jump and dunk on a 20-foot basketball hoop, right? Sure. Because we're under Earth's gravity. We were born in Earth's gravity, and now we're going to a planet with less gravity than Earth. Now, let's say we made it there and we had created the first generation of Martians. The first generation will be almost as strong as us, but not quite as strong, because their gestation period for the 9 months went through the cycle of Mars gravity. And then they still got the DNA, still got the genes, but because of the gravity, it's going to affect the muscle fibers. The muscle fibers are going to become less compact, more elongated. And then by the second generation of that, third generation, those people will be extremely weak and completely used to Mars gravity, maybe even very small. If you bring them to Earth, they would probably be crushed by Earth's gravity without some type of a special exterior steel cage, okay? So now you look into these Anunnaki beings coming here from what appear to be in the text, much larger planets in some cases. Planets, according to some of the texts, 4 to 5 times, even 6 times larger than Earth. So think about that for a minute. Wait a minute, 4 to 5, maybe even 6 times larger than Earth. To back it up, astrophysicists have hypothesized, based on the movement of the planets in our solar system and places that they are and things that have happened to, like Uranus being tilted on the side, that a planet gravitationally got thrown through our solar system millions of years ago, maybe. That was 4 to 6 times the size of Earth, larger than Earth. So
these are those rhombohedron crystals in your pineal gland. When those crystals become electrically activated, all of a sudden they start calling energy back to them, and they begin to build their own electromagnetic field. We're seeing common people around the world becoming supernatural when they follow this formula. They're healing them.
You come from a planet maybe that big. Tiamat was approximately that big as well. And you come to Earth. Now you are a superhuman. You're massive. You're stronger. Picking up giant stones and blocks and knocking over trees and everything else is a piece of cake because this stuff weighs nothing to you. It's basic standard physics. It's not even magic. And then you have accounts of people witnessing them. Human beings, our hominids, our cousins witnessing them saying, hey, these people were here. They were massive. We were grasshoppers in their eyesight. They were 10 Ls and all these crazy terminologies they were used to describe the height and the size of these massive beings. In the walls throughout Egypt, you can see hieroglyphs of some of these people, massive people, and then you can see the human beings working and serving them down by the kneecap in some cases. In Samaria, you can find, well, now modern day Iraq, we found a lot of the tablets and the scriptures and the cylinder scrolls also depicting these people being so large that most of the humans were by the kneecap or slightly up to the waistline. And then over time, as you get closer to the new, the modern age or the what you would call the dynastic era, for example, in Egypt and so forth, you see that the people, these gods, become smaller and smaller, so they're almost normalized. Why? Because as the generations move forward and the bloodline moves forward, based on Earth's gravity, based on Earth's elements here, the oxygen levels, the sunlight, the carbon monoxide levels, and also in some way they made themselves they gave themselves the ability to mate with us and create offspring. And so now they're getting some of that genetics as well. So that combination or that mixture began to create smaller and smaller people over time. And so until the point where it was almost indistinguishable from a normal person. Initially, they had these huge elongated skulls, huge jawbones, which have been discovered all over the world, like the Paracas skulls. Some of them only have one parietal plate. Human beings have two parietal plates. You can't explain away a parietal plate missing, okay? Things like that. The descriptions of them all over the world vary, but a lot of it went into quote unquote mythology. But in reality, I really believe that these were massive beings that existed. And there were two types of giants. One type of giant was ones who came here in the original pantheon of gods, the Sumerian pantheon, long before the Greek pantheon existed. Now, their names have changed throughout the ages and throughout time. So you see Enki, all of a sudden he's Poseidon, he got all these different names. Thoth is he's Thoth in ancient Egypt. He's also known as Tehuti and Jehuti in Africa and other parts of Africa. He's known as Mercury in Greece. He's also Odin. And then all of a sudden he's Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica. He's Kukulkan, Lord Pakal, and all these other names, Viracocha. So their names changed over the eons, depending on what region of the planet they influenced, but it's always going back to the same exact person. But again, starting off massive and over time, through generations, the body size has changed. The second type of giant were these Nephilim. They talk about that in the Old Testament of the Bible and also in the Torah. These were some of these Anunnaki beings, or these Atlantean people, mating with humans, and the offspring, some of them were giants, really big giants. So again, but that's the evidence of this whole, creating a race of people based on two different types of genetics and two different physical atmospheres initially from the person that is the host of the sperm and the egg. And all of a sudden they come together and now they create this person, initially a giant. In some cases, these matings didn't go that well. Some of these giants were deformed, had one eye, walked with limps, just abnormal giants. So you had two different types of giants. You had what they call the heroes of old, or the savants, and then you had these Nephilim giants as well. Some of them were very intelligent, had the wisdom of their Atlantean parents. They would give them the wisdom, like construction wisdom and so forth, and the secret of knowledge. But some of them were deformed.
So if I may dumb this all down, what you were saying in regards to kind of the watering down of the genetics of giants throughout mating, it would be the equivalent of Superman showing up here on Earth, and because we have a yellow sun, can now fly. But on Krypton, and fly, have super strength, and lasers come out of his eye and all that kind of stuff. But in Krypton, he's just a normal dude.
Yeah,
could get bullied by anybody else.
Right.
But here he's a god. And if generations would go by, if he and Lois Lane had a kid, well, that kid would definitely have some of Superman's vibe, without question. But he also has his mother's genetics, so he would be a watered down version of his father genetically. And then that kid grows up, has maybe. And since there is no other god that he can mate with, he mates with another human, and again, watered down to the point where maybe 3, 4, 5 generations down, he has a little bit of superhuman strength. Maybe he could jump really high instead of fly. There's a few little, and as generations go by, it gets almost wiped away. So watered down that it's something so subtle that doesn't even make sense.
Exactly. Every now and then you have a rare occurrence of somebody that has a remnant of the gene that maybe they can run really fast, or maybe they have great eyesight, but nothing that like hits the radar like, oh, this is a super being. No, just somebody with, some special skill.
Now, when you were saying that the different Anunnaki went around the world, and that's why we see pyramids, because that was always a question of mine. Like, why the pyramids in Egypt? We got pyramids in Mesoamerica. We got pyramids in Japan. We got pyramids in China. We got pyramids everywhere. These cultures should have never spoken, specifically the ones in Mesoamerica. Like, there's no physical way, even if they tried to cross over from Russia, there was that short-faced bear that was not letting anybody show up for a few thousand years. That's one of the reasons why we never crossed over. I always wondered about that. So is that why in, like, let's say Mesoamerica, it's pyramids, but they're not Egyptian pyramids? And in Cambodia, they're pyramids, but they're not Egyptian pyramids. In Japan and in China and every place else, they're just a slight bit off from the, if we call it the perfect pyramid, let's say the Great Pyramid was a perfect pyramid, but in Mesoamerica, they weren't like that, but still extremely impressive to look at. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt. Not only did they share this knowledge and this blueprint, they spread it around the planet. The evidence is, for example, at Giza in Egypt, right? You have the three main pyramids everyone kind of really knows of. They're aligned with the Orion star system, not now, but on a particular precessionary period, they align with Orion. But then you look at the three pyramids at Teotihuacan in Mexico, which used to be Mesoamerica. Well, they're also aligned with the Orion star system at a particular precession. Not only that, here goes the evidence that they're linked. The base of the Great Pyramid at Giza and the base of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico, are the same. The Great Pyramid height and the Teotihuacan Pyramid height are exactly split by 50%. So the Teotihuacan Pyramid is exactly 50% the height of the Great Pyramid at Giza. And so we say, wait a minute, what's going on? They're both built on top of aquifers. Even though the aquifer in Giza is dried out now because the Nile has withered away and moved a different direction, but it was there. And we know that the aquifer was there because the aquifer tubes are still underneath the Great Pyramid. I've actually been inside of them. And then you see the Teotihuacan Pyramid built on top of an aquifer. Both of them probably had the same purpose. At least one of the purposes was similar, which was power generation, wireless power generation. And so you look at the pyramids in China. Well, there's three famous pyramids in China that also align with Orion and are put in the same exact position and are built on top of an aquifer. So how in the world can you have this? Then all of a sudden you take the USGS.gov geological survey map of the Earth's magnetic field, and right out of these pyramid sites around the planet, up whips out a gigantic magnetic field. How in the world do you have that kind of coincidence? So in America, with enough circumstantial evidence, you could put somebody in jail. If there's enough, all you need is circumstantial. So we're saying there's enough circumstantial evidence to prove the case that these three pyramid sites, just those three alone, and there's many more I can say, are linked by one blueprint, by one level of knowledge, by one understanding, and built in different parts of the world that should not be able to communicate, contact, and they sure as hell didn't use chicken bones and copper chisels to build them like mainstream says. All three of those pyramid sites are built in various different ways, but the technique and the understanding of how to get them to accomplish whatever the goal was and the alignment with the stars is all the same.
Well, when I was at Chichen Itza, I did see some chicken bones. I'm just throwing it out there. I saw some, I'm not sure if they were built with them, but I did see some chicken bones. No, I mean, it's different. We're talking about this from an intellectual point of view, but when you are standing in front of these structures, and you see not only the perfection in their design, but I always say this because I still think it's insane. The clapping thing in Chichen Itza, when you clap and it reverberates back to you, the amount of engineering that it takes to do something like that in today's world would be difficult, and we'd be using computers and engineers at a very high level to recreate something like that in stone, no less.
Oh yeah, it'd be very hard. See, what people don't have to consider is this: before you take on a challenge like that, you have to have foreknowledge that it's going to work, because you can't, especially in that era of time, you can't divert the resources to building something that's supposed to have all these features, like the sun coming down the snake at a particular solstice of the year to make the calendar and and have this reverberating sound like this particular bird, right? The Quetzalcoatl bird to come off and bounce back and reflect back on you. And all this has to be foreknowledge. The blueprint has to have already been proven. It has to already have been done before somewhere else, or at least tested in a computer-assisted design program, a CAD program, before you say, okay, we're going to divert endless resources to doing this now. Another thing that's interesting, just came back from Cambodia. We took these people on a great tour of Cambodia, a life-changing tour. The moat around Angkor Wat is the largest temple complex in the world, okay? And the ancients there, or the people who have handed down verbal history to the people who are indigenous to the land, say that that temple was built in a day and a night, that it was poured into place. And when you look at it, it kind of looks like it was poured rock. But what's interesting is the moat which is now dried out, but it's still there. No, sorry, the moat now, that moat's full of water. It still has a reservoir. I'm sorry, the other one was dried out, but this one's full of reservoir. But if you look at how much mass of soil was removed to create that moat, it was over 188,000 cubic feet of 188,000 cubic meters or cubic feet of soil was removed. Okay, almost to the exact number. You don't quote me exactly, but if you look it up, it'll be very similar. But the point I'm making is the Great Pyramid was like 98,000 cubic meters. So all of a sudden you're saying, wait a minute, there's more mass removed from this moat alone, more mass than the Great Pyramid to make this and to make it into a reservoir that connects to the rice fields to create irrigation, to capture the water from the mountain in the right angle and know how to create a reservoir that will sustain itself and also protect the temple. So we're talking about a system here, again, foreknowledge.
Put your trust in Toyota Service Centers.
What's for lunch?
Gas station sushi.
I wouldn't trust that.
Oh,
It's pungent.
Stop into a service center today for our break savings event. Toyota Service Centers. Keep your Toyota a Toyota.
You don't move more mass than the pyramid to create something that you hope works. You have to know calculus when you're creating this type of a reservoir system. You have to understand how to divert water, how to set up and create irrigation, and all these things before you spend the resources moving more mass than the Great Pyramid. The evidence is all around us, and we just don't want to see it for some reason.
And it takes a lot of chicken bones too, my friend. It takes a lot of chicken bones to move that. I mean,
Lot of
I've never heard the term chicken bones, and that's just genius. I'm going to use that constantly from now on because it's hilarious, and it illustrates the point how ridiculous it is. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's ridiculous.
copper era tools could not build this.
Yeah.
It's just
They bend.
it's
They bend.
and not at the exact precision of what's going on. So
Right.
let me ask you this, my friend. We're talking about the Anunnaki, and it sounds like a pretty magical story, and it sounds like a very elaborate idea. And whether you believe it or not, irrelevant. But my question to you is, what are the spiritual implications of these beings coming down from other galaxies and things like that?
Mhm.
What does that have to? How is that? What's the implication to the soul, to reincarnation, to our journey here as a soul in this three-dimensional space? What is the implications to all of that?
Well, the implications are massive. We found out through the ancient tablets and texts that the entire religious system is coming from these Atlantean people, these Anunnaki people. They lay down this religious system because it's one of the perfect ways of controlling the masses. It's a psychological psyop that has the power to control masses, control revenue, and control labor all at once. It's really ingenious. And when you analyze and look at the genetic information from modern day geneticists that say that there's a worship gene inserted into the human genome and it can be switched on or off. And so when it's on, a person wants to worship something outside of him or herself. But when it's off, the person looks inside. So wait a minute, what does this mean? It means that we have been duped into religion. We have been basically, they utilize it to control us, to generate revenue, money, sacrifices, which was their food. It's like them going grocery shopping, having us bring the slain lambs and the fresh vegetables to them. And then also, not to mention what it's done for the current era. If a person can really wrap their mind around what's going on and what happened and realize that the text that they've been reading, that they're basing their eternity on, is not exactly what they think it is, and that the origin and the roots of it lead to something a little more dark and sinister, they may wake up to the reality that they themselves need to be in control of their own destiny and stop putting their faith in outside sources and begin to believe in themselves, begin to forgive themselves, and begin to see the God that's already inside of them, because the same infinite God that made this entire universe and maybe this multiverse is inside of every single atom inside of their body, and that they themselves are already divine and they are already eternal. The atoms that make up their body have been here for billions of years. And the spirit energy that inhabits the body itself is multidimensional and eternal, and that we don't need any outside person or being or source or God or anything else that we believe in to justify the power already in us. The secret is to take a journey to inner space and discover who we truly are and what we're capable of and how much power is already inside of us. And that will change the exterior outcome around us. We'll manifest a new reality. We can create heaven on earth, which I believe is the ultimate mission. The experiment of this universe itself is, and I do believe this is an experiment, is to see how long it's going to take for every civilization that rises up throughout the entire universe to turn heaven, to turn hell into heaven, to take wherever they are on whatever planet and go through the tumultuous time period, the dark times, and rise up and seek the light, which Thoth talks about in the Emerald Tablets. How long will it take this civilization to rise up? How many will destroy themselves before they get a chance to do that? How many people will reincarnate and come back and learn from previous times and come back and try to do it better? So I just think it's a grand experiment and a way of the universe trying to experience and get to know itself and get into how I want to word this. The universe wants to know itself, and it wants to actually learn and grow through living through the experience of Google's of entities throughout the entire universe. So it's living subjectively through everything to gain information and knowledge to find a way to gain perfection within this universe itself.
And if anyone has ever questioned what you're just saying, all you have to do is go visit the Vatican, and then you'll go, oh, okay, this makes sense. The gold is on the walls. Oh, on all the walls. Yeah. Oh, okay. Because that's what Jesus was about. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to see. And throughout history, religions, quote unquote, were about control. It really was about control. Then there's these philosophical ideas, Confucianism, Buddhism to a certain extent, Hinduism to a certain extent, which told you they were almost more philosophical on looking inward than it was about control. But even then, people took even those ideas and twisted them for their own purposes to control masses of people or to get money, to get power, to get fame, and so on through it. Not much has changed in that way, has it, Billy?
No, not much. They just found a way to put a new twist. We got the remix going on right now, right? And so I actually know a couple of people that are actually pastors, and they have studied the Anunnaki. I'm talking about deeply. They understand and know all of it. I said, well, why don't you bring this information to the people and teach well, then I won't be able to pay my bills. That's the exact words. The exact words. I won't be able to pay my bills. So their bills and their lifestyle is more important than getting the truth out, because they realize that once a person has that kind of knowledge, the entire religious system will begin to collapse in their mind. Their belief system will begin to collapse. And they say, well, what do I need you for? What am I sending you money for? And they'll begin to realize like, wow, I should be investing that money back into myself and my own knowledge. And they begin to take a hero's journey within themselves and see life for what it really is. And so it's an unfortunate thing, but I think over time it's gotten better that more people I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years are finally slightly pulling away from those religious dogma belief systems and kind of really trying to find themselves and figure out more about themselves and more about the universe and more about the divine power that's already in them. And once a person gets to a point where they realize that the voice inside their head is not some sky daddy with a magic wand, with a white robe and a big white beard floating around in space somewhere, granting them wishes, when they begin to realize that the voice inside their head is their own voice, when it morphs and changes into the voice of their own vocal cords inside their head, they begin to realize it's them talking to themselves, their higher self talking to themselves here and trying to guide them along the way. And so it's an ascension process. So it's a process of growing and becoming born again. Born again through consciousness. Elevated consciousness is the way to be born again, not through dumping yourself in a pool or a bucket or a lake or whatever, but it is through understanding and growing and beginning to realize where you were a week, a minute, a year, 10 years ago, and seeing yourself at those lower levels and that you have risen up through consciousness, and you'll be born again many times in one lifetime.
It's
good morning. Maybe it's a brand new day.
Go from Greek classics one day to Italian masterpieces the next. With Norwegian.
It's amazing though. More so, I think now than I've ever seen in my lifetime, more and more people are searching this information out. More and more people are leaving organized fear-based religions by the boatload. I mean, the Catholic Church is on the ropes, as they say, though they still have a tremendous amount of power and money. And other churches and other religions are hurting too, because people are waking up. There's too much information out there now, where when there was no sharing of information like this, or the internet in general, people were just stuck to their whatever the priest said, whatever the town said, whatever the community said. And there was these weirdos that would go away to, hey, I just spent a year or two in Egypt and I learned all sorts of stuff. And they're like, heretic, burn them. And that was the end of that.
Yes, literally.
But now it's so much more different that people are starting to wake up more and more. Do you find that as well?
Oh, I see it everywhere I go, man. People come up to me everywhere and say, man, you changed my life. I started researching what you were talking about, and I started realizing that, wow, the information I've been fed from my family, generation, is actually not fully correct. That there's deeper information and sources that help to create that information I was fed. and they're beginning to realize now that there's a much deeper story. Like I tell people, if you're going to base your entire eternity on information in one book, shouldn't you know everything about it? Shouldn't you know how to break it down left and right? Shouldn't you be going in to figure out what are the previous languages it was in and checking that out and looking for those translations and going back even further than that? And once you begin to do that, you end up where? You end up at the Sumerian tablets, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, the Epic of Gilgamesh. You end up at the Egyptian book of Going Forth by Day, the Tibetan book of the Dead. I mean, you end up at all these texts that are already here. And it's like, wow, this really did the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. This comes out of here, but I see now I can discern where the information was skewed. All of a sudden now, where Thoth is talking about seeking the light and getting the light, the same words of Yeshua in the modern day Bible, they throw a little sentence in there. Oh, by the way, you should obey your slave master as you obey me. You know, Yeshua, he's not running around telling people to obey slave masters. I mean, come on. At some point, people have to wake up and realize this information has been added for the purpose of control and domination, but they are. And so what's good about it is gradually people are finding these texts because we've been talking about them, shows like yours, shows like mine, and many others. And they're starting to ask questions that can't be answered or don't want to be answered. And now they're saying, you know what, let me pull back and let me start doing some more research for myself. So what I love about this whole platform and what we've been doing, we are creating researchers, which is what we want. I don't want people to take me for my word. I want you to take notes on what I'm saying. I want you to go back, play this video over and over again and start searching for these things and come up with your own understanding. And I guarantee one thing, it'll be slightly different than the dogma understanding you probably had at the moment you started researching.
My friend, I can talk to you for another 6 hours as I usually can. And you will definitely be back without question because I love talking to you, Bill, and I think the audience loves it when we get together as well. So before I go, where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
Yes, everyone listen, we have an amazing TV app, the Forbidden Knowledge TV app. So you can go to any app store, Google Play, iOS App Store. You can go to the Samsung App Store on your Samsung TV. You can go to Amazon Fire TV, Roku. Get the Forbidden Knowledge, number 4, Forbidden Knowledge TV app, and check out all the great content we have. About 3,000 episodes of content up on the app now, and more coming as I have a brand new TV series about the Anunnaki coming out very, very soon. We start filming in just a few weeks, and this is going to be a mind-blowing series, incredibly done with the highest level of technology. We're talking about I'll be on a fully immersed set, so I'll be standing inside these ancient sites. Some of the footage you'll see will be my original footage from places I've actually been, because as you know, I like to go and do the research myself.
And do you have any parting messages for the audience, Bill?
Parting message would be, one thing you have to understand, and the most important thing is, you have the power to create your own reality. Stop relinquishing your power to outside sources. Stop giving away your energy to outside sources and hoping and begging and wishing. Look within yourself. And when you tap into yourself and go on your own hero's journey within yourself, finding out more about who you are, self-discovery, going on the journey and trusting the process, you'll come out on the other end as a master. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But when the teacher is ready, the master will appear.
Billy, a pleasure as always, my friend. Keep the good fight going, and we will speak soon, my friend. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that
thousands of years before them, an advanced race lived on this planet, built an Atlantean global civilization, probably Atlantean interplanetary civilization that had capability of space flight and everything else, and that they most likely genetically modified the existing hominids, which then became Homo sapiens sapien, in order to put us all in slavery and make us do the workload for them. If they knew that, those stories and those tales from the Sumerian tablets, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day, aka the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation, the Epic Vatra Hasis, and all the myth of Adapa. If I knew that all these texts predominantly made up the majority of the Bible, then we would be like, well, what are you guys preaching to us? This is all fake. This is all lies. And we know that in the Emerald Tablets, which is my book companion with the Emerald Tablets, that the majority of Jesus' teachings in the New Testament come directly from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which is 38,000-year-old teachings.
I'd like to welcome back to the show, returning champion, Billy Carson. How you doing, Billy?
Hey, great. Look, great to be back. Thank you for having me back on your amazing show.
Thank you so much for coming back, brother. I mean, our last conversation broke over 1 million think it's at 1.2 million right now. So people like you and I having a conversation. So I think I think we booked this before that. We were just like, oh man, we gotta keep talking. But then it kind of blew up, man. So people are excited. This is really great. We're getting this information out there.
Yes. Listen, that's the most important thing, that people begin to hear this information so that they can become researchers on their own and also digest it, discern it, and decide, for themselves based on the information given, how do they feel about it? How does it make them feel? And what enlightenment can they get out of it? So this is great, man.
So since last time we had our conversation, I had the wonderful opportunity to fly over to Europe and spend a little time in Italy. So too much gelato, first of all, and way too much cappuccino and all sorts of deliciousness over there. But while I was there, I took the opportunity to visit the Vatican and Vatican City. And it was a really eye-opening experience because I went to Vatican Museum, which is awe-inspiring is not even the word to use. There's so much stuff that they have in that museum. For people, if you've never been there, I'm assuming you have, there's so many sculptures that they have that they literally just pile them next to, like, it's like room after room of them. They're just next to each other. Like normally, like one of those pieces would be the centerpiece of another museum, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They have an embarrassment of riches.
And that's the words that was embarrassment of riches. You're going there like, oh, Raphael did that. And oh, Donatello did that. Oh, Michelangelo did that dome. And you're like, and then you get to the Sistine Chapel. I was exhausted by the time I got to the Sistine Chapel. I was just like, what was, oh, nice. Because there's so much. It started to open my eyes right away. I'm like, wow, how did they get all of this stuff? And it's not just all like Christian stuff, Egyptian, things from Mesopotamia. I mean, it's insane. And then you walk into St. Peter's Basilica and you're just in awe. It's the biggest church I've ever been in. And it's just like every corner, you just think, and every corner there's like masterpieces from every, like Michelangelo, Donatello, all these people. And there's the La Pietra, and you're looking at all that stuff. And I don't know if you've had this opportunity. Did you go underground into the catacombs?
No, I didn't do the catacombs there. I did the catacombs in Alexandria, but I didn't do the catacombs in Rome.
So the catacombs in St. Peter's is where all the popes are.
Yeah.
So I went down to that area, and all the popes are there. And I turned a corner, and it's St. Peter's resting space. Like it's the Apostle Peter. It was insane. So as I was going through all of this, the main thing I thought myself was, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is that this has little to do with Jesus. This entire thing has such little to do with Jesus' teachings, Jesus Christ the man, and has so much to do about their own power, their own influence, and maintaining that power and influence over the world. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, you hit it on the head. So, the Catholic religion has literally nothing to do with truthfully achieving a higher sense of consciousness or Christ consciousness. It's really all about them. And even like, for example, the Pope or the priest of the Catholic Church, wherever you are in the world, that's supposed to be the conduit. That's supposed to be God walking in the flesh. Now, we know that we are all gods and God is us, but they take it to another level where they truthfully believe that they're the actual creator of the universe walking around in a mindset of domination, not collaboration. And so that's where it goes really south. And then a lot of their rules and laws and their traditions are just all about, generating revenue and money. For example, you go in and you admit that you did something wrong, and now they're going, well, you got to pay a penance to this, and you pay this penance, and that's supposed to, rid you of your sin. So from the mindset that they've established is, I can go out here, I can drink, I can hang out, I can have sex with anybody I want outside of marriage, I can violate all the rules of quote unquote Christianity, as long as I come in here and talk to this guy behind this invisible box, and then I can just pay some money, and all of my sins will be absolved, and I'm good to go and do it all over again. So I can do this once a week. So now I don't have to answer for any of my consequences. I can literally run rough and ragged. I can run, like it's the Wild Wild West on the streets, and then I can curse people out, whatever I want, and I can just go and talk to this guy. So they've created a system where they generate revenue and money off of beguiling people into thinking that they can actually absolve themselves of their own responsibility of their own actions by paying this extra money out, just admitting something to somebody behind a box.
Another example was I was in Naples, and I went to the catacombs in Naples, one of the catacombs there, and I was talking to the guide, and I go, well, what is this? Like, who owns this? And like, oh, anything Christian found in Italy, it's automatically property of the Vatican. If they just discovered it, it's automatic if it's property. So when they found it, and this is so interesting, when they found it, they called up the Vatican, like, hey, we found these catacombs. We want to kind of open it up to the public and let people tour. And they're like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want. That's fine. no problem. And then a couple of years later, the Vatican's like, oh, they're making some money. So then they went back to him. This is straight from the guide. He goes, yeah, the Vatican, now we have to pay, because, oh, by the way, all the money that is made from the catacombs tickets goes into social programs for the city of Naples, meaning after school programs, arts, things for schools and kids, and social programs. So it's for everybody to know. Once the Vatican found out it needed money, they go, oh, okay, since it's making money now, you need to pay us $3 million a year as a license and 50% of all ticket sales. And I was just like, are you kidding? And then when you walk around the Vatican City, you're just like, there's literally gold on the walls. Are you, nothing to do with Jesus. Nothing.
It's insane. It's insane. You see, the Vatican is its own private kingdom.
Yeah, it's a country. It's a country.
Yeah, exactly. They create their own rules and regulations on the fly, and they can change a law or a rule tomorrow or in 5 minutes, and then everyone will have to abide by that.
And you know what's funny? I got into a cab in from Vatican City, going back to where we were staying, and the taxi driver, who's a local, we started talking about the Vatican, and boy, he just started tearing them apart. They're like, we have to pay as Italian citizens, we have to pay them every year, even though we don't live in Vatican City. You've got to, like, they pay no taxes. They basically still control Italy behind the scenes. There's absolute power behind the scenes. They're like, there was a girl that went missing in Vatican City. The family was still trying to find them, but once you're there, it's gone. You're just gone. It was fascinating how much power that place has. And let's not even talk about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, the archives. The archives where the books, the knowledge that they have raped and pillaged for centuries from Alexandria, either before or after it was, going through its thing, and all the libraries. What have you learned about what is in the archives?
In the archives.
This marks the potential start of a third world war, and we will soon be hit with a silent, untraceable attack on America that unfortunately very few will see coming. This attack will be unlike any we have seen or experienced before, one that directly targets American power grids and critical infrastructure that will lead to a year-long famine that will bring America to its knees and starve us into submission. I know some patriots have been preparing for this eventuality, but stockpiling and growing your own food is simply not enough, because this marks just the first phase of the well-orchestrated attack on America. And with Sleepy Joe and his team of incompetents at the helm, people will soon realize no one is coming to save them. Then it will be every man for himself, and the looting will begin. Supermarkets will be ransacked. Local gangs and marauders will target anyone who looks like easy pickings. And by the end of the first week, millions of unprepared, desperate, hungry Americans will be eating from garbage cans if they are lucky. And that's exactly what our enemies want, to destroy our great nation from the inside. But the reality is, you do not have to be a victim. There is something you can do to prepare. I'd like to introduce you to a good friend, Teddy Daniels. He is a United States war hero, a White House insider, and a Purple Heart recipient. And he has just released an emergency broadcast that reveals the one thing you must do in the first hour of the attack. That will guarantee you will have food safely secured for you and your family for the entire year. It's a simple empty closet hack that anyone can do as long as you have 3 feet of copper wire. Seeing this right now makes you one of the lucky ones. Because when the attack happens, most Americans will have no idea what hit them, but not you. You'll be in complete control, and that puts a lot of power in your hands. Yes, others may laugh when they see you quietly preparing for this imminent attack, but once our farmlands and food supply are completely ransacked, those woke millennials won't be laughing anymore. They will be starving, wishing they had
archives at the Vatican. First of all, it's about 5 miles of archives underground and very, very secure access. In other words, you can't just go, I'm going to go check out the archives underground. You have to be a security cleared, almost top secret cleared based on their standards to get down there. But they have in there so many incredible discoveries, so much knowledge and wisdom that have been stolen, literally stolen from all around the world. And of course, the Library of Alexandria, that was a book heist. The fire was a distraction. The real story of Alexandria, it was a book heist. It was a knowledge theft. They stole the knowledge. They left a few books burning here, and then they burned it down to the ground. But the vast majority of the knowledge and wisdom stored at Alexandria was siphoned off and taken to that underground, I call it an underground base at the Vatican. Down there also, according to even some Jesuits, are bones of actual, quote unquote, alien beings information about advanced beings that visited this planet, the Anunnaki, according to the Dogon, the Nomo, and the Sumerians call them the Pantheon, call them the Anunnaki Pantheon out of Sumeria. They call them Nitiru out of Africa. They have all these relics and artifacts of these particular people, even out of Greece. They have all this down there. They have information even out of Iraq that shows and proves that advanced races had lived on this planet long before this current civilization here exists. And we're talking about eons and eons ago, super highly advanced with technologies and capabilities of flight and everything else, weapons of war that existed. All that information is stored underneath the Vatican archives, along with some of the most incredible texts and books and inventions that ever existed on this planet. And they siphon it away, and they're hoarding all of that wisdom and knowledge so that they can keep control and power and domination over the world. And guess what? It's working.
So that was my next question. The reasoning for all this is if you control the information, you control the knowledge. There can't be, if the public is ignorant, it's much more controllable.
Yes. You know, if the public knew that long before Jesus, long before Moses and all these people, you know, supposedly were even born or existed, that thousands of years before them, an advanced race lived on this planet, built an Atlantean global civilization, probably Atlantean interplanetary civilization that had capability of space flight and everything else, and that they most likely genetically modified the existing hominids, which then became Homo sapiens sapien, in order to put us all in slavery and make us do the workload for them. If they knew that, those stories and those tales from the Sumerian tablets, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day, aka the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you know, the Enuma Elish and the Seven Tablets of Creation, the Epic of Atrahasis, and all the Myth of Adapa, if they knew that all these texts predominantly made up the majority of the Bible, then we would be like, well, what are you guys preaching to us? This is all fake. This is all lies. And we know that in the Emerald Tablets, you know, which is my book compendium of the Emerald Tablets, that the majority of Jesus' teachings in the New Testament come directly from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which are 38,000-year-old teachings. So they must control and hide and secure evidence of this information and this knowledge to keep people basically in this level of ignorance where they can continue to control them and steal their money.
Well, you know what, and this is the weirdest thing. While I was driving around, you know, I went to Rome. I was staying in Rome when I went to Vatican City, and then I was down the street from the Colosseum, and I got to see the Colosseum. And you see Rome is everywhere, like Roman, every stuff all over the place. And man, I don't want to sound ignorant, man, but it was the first time when I went to Vatican City and I connected it to Rome. I was like, wait a minute, Roman Catholic Church. I never connected Roman, as in like the Rome Empire, to Catholicism, even though it's always been called the Roman Catholic Church. I just never connected it. And that was the first time I'm like, oh my God, that's right, Constantine. Oh my God, he's the one that created the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And they're the ones that sat down and like, okay, let's argue about what really Jesus is. And so they basically built up the mythology in the Council of Nicaea, right?
Yes. The Council of Nicaea came together, built up the mythology. They added to the story. They took from a lot of ancient texts and tablets, and then they kind of curated this book, which they want to call it a canonized Bible, right? So they took from here, took from there, this tablet, that tablet, this scripture, that papyrus, this Nag Hammadi piece. We like this coming out of this text over here. And then they kind of just culminated together and then remixed it, put their own spin on it to make sure that slavery was approved and okay, right? Well, we want to add that in there. Got to make sure the slavery is approved, you know, because people were enslaving each other since back in before the black slaves. I'm talking about in ancient times, slaves were already going on. Slavery was already going on. It's nothing new. Yeah. And then so you had that. And then, of course, we want to collect a lot of money. So they have to pay us. We got to make sure we got the money. You got to pay, you know what I'm saying? And you got to do the labor and you got to bring the offerings because we ourselves are not going to go out and hunt and grow farms and everything else. So you guys, you're going to have to bring these offerings to us. We want it already cooked. So make sure it's a burnt offering. Make sure you drain the blood. Make sure it's healthy for us, and bring us your first harvest, because we want the freshest fruit and the freshest vegetables. We don't want the stale stuff. Yes. We want your freshest wheat and the freshest breads. And so people would come down and bring everything to the church and give it all away, along with whatever money they had left. And these people would live like fat cats, literally off of pimping the knowledge and understanding of what's going on and tricking people into believing that they had some access to divine power and knowledge when they were just really high-level pimps, is what I call them, man. And the people, you know, the ignorance of the people. You know, you almost can't blame them, but yet at the same time, it's like, how can so many masses of people stand up and fall for this? But you know, it happens. But also, you got to remember the way that they went around, the way that the Council of Nicaea put this in place with Rome, and Rome said, we're now going to dominate the planet with this religion. So they combined their beliefs with the Christianity, all right, because they felt like keeping it separate was creating too much, you know, anger between the two sides, and everybody wanted to go head to head. So you know what, we're going to combine it. We'll add our stuff in with their stuff, and we'll make it a national religion. Well, yeah, they were getting over.
Well, they were getting unruly, and Constantine said, "Look, I'll be Christian. I'll be Christian. I'll be Christian. Let's all do this, guys. I'll be Christian. Let's go over here. We'll put a pope up. The pope, he talks to God every day. The bishops, they talk to God every few days. The cardinals, they talk to them like maybe once a month, twice a month, and the priests talk to them every once in a while. But it's an ordered thing. But no, but we're with you guys because the Christians were starting to get a little out of hand, so they needed to control them.
Yeah, they need to control them. So if you can't beat them, join them. That's the mindset, right? And we'll add some of our stuff in with theirs. We'll mix it all around. We'll remix it. But now here's the trick: as Rome was on its global escapade, trying to dominate and take over the planet, everywhere they went, they would then install this Christianity, this Catholic Christianity in those areas. But this is how they did it. People believe that Christianity was spread by love and the good news, and no, it was spread by rape, bloodshed, murdering, and killing. And so when they came to your town, they literally would take your women and your children. They would, they would take the leader of that village or whatever. They would show that you guys are going to bow down to us. You're going to follow this religion. You're going to speak our language, and they'll make an example out of somebody, and then everybody else would follow suit. And if they didn't, then they would say, okay, we're going to give you a lot of these torture devices. They would have the Pope's spear, all right, which is still in the museums right now. They would stick that into a woman's personal parts, and it would explode on the inside of her. They would have this triangular pyramid with a spire on top, and they would reel a man up and down and let it go up into his back door over and over again until he died. They had all these torture mechanisms. They tortured and killed over 80 million people over the course of 700 years under the order of the popes, in order to spread love and peace and Christianity all around the planet. And so, but this, again, all with the authority of Rome. So this global conquest to spread this and collect money was all done by bloodshed and torture, not by love and peace.
So just as Jesus says, love thy neighbor and do unto others as you don't do unto you, but make sure that you bring a check, cash, or Venmo.
Exactly.
I don't remember Jesus saying these things.
No.
And it's fascinating, like you see all of this when you walk into, by the way, I don't know how many churches I walked into probably 30 churches because they're everywhere in Italy. Like you can't
everywhere you turn.
Like there's a huge church, and then like 2 blocks later there's another church. And it's like there are churches everywhere. And every single church I walked into, no matter how rinky-dinky it looked from the outside, you walk in, masterpieces on the wall, on the ceilings, scrub. It was no matter where you went. It was nothing like here in the States. Here you walk into some churches and they're very humble and there's no such thing as a humble church in Italy. It was just, so as you as an ignorant person from the field or from the country, and you walk into St. Peter's Basilica and you don't understand anything, you have to believe God is here because it's just something so grand. So grand. And I consider myself a fairly educated person. And I walked in and you're just in awe. You're in awe of it. So I could think, wow, if I didn't know better, you could easily fall into this. I mean, it's
yes.
And then let's not talk about the marketing campaign of hiring every great master artist of the last 500 years and commission religious, that's why every time you go into a museum, it's always generally speaking, always Jesus or some sort of religious depiction because the Vatican paid for all of that, right? Am I right?
Exactly.
What's going on here? Can't you see we're having a meeting?
Do you have a legendary hero?
No, but what about it?
Give him 777 draws. +5 legendary heroes.
Wait! Why are you so generous?
That's because we're playing their real zombie survival game, State of Survival. As long as players download the game through this video, they'll get 777 draws for free. Plus, you can enter the gift code Guide to Lucky. And you'll get the greatest hero, Lucky, who will help you unlock all the dangerous zones in 5 minutes. And you can rescue even more legendary heroes. And you can get numerous survival resources to upgrade your shelter. Scroll down and download this real zombie survival game. Go get your 777 draws now!
State of Survival. Play now.
Starting tomorrow, this odd rice hack can change your life and help you drop up to 13 pounds week after week. The reason your belly gets big is not because you got a little fat beneath the skin. You get big fat under the muscle, way inside where those organs are that I showed you. If you're struggling to lose weight, then you must see this. According to a 2023 study from research scientists at Harvard and Johns Hopkins, a slow metabolism in losing weight has nothing to do with your age, genetics, diet, or your thyroid, but instead, what top scientists are calling ancient fat-burning cells, which have almost disappeared in you and every overweight person on the planet. They confirmed these fat-burning cells to be the real biological root cause behind an increase in stubborn belly fat and unexplained weight gain. Their studies found that these cells decrease rapidly the older you get, making it literally impossible for your body to properly fight away stubborn body fat. This inflicts chaos on every aspect of your health, wreaking havoc on the hormones that control hunger levels, causing less calories to get burned right away, and more calories to be stored as unhealthy fat. It's the reason why some people manage to stay so slim no matter what they eat. While you cut calories and give up your favorite foods, spend hours at the gym, yet find it nearly impossible to keep the excess weight off long term, because neither solution increases the amount of fat-burning cells in your body. However, a whistleblowing doctor with deep roots in natural healing has leaked a powerful, all-natural rice hack that activates and multiplies your body's fat-burning cells by 326%, especially in people over the age of 35, effortlessly melting away at years of stubborn fat for good. And it works like crazy. A clinically proven fat-dissolving rice hack helping anyone, regardless of their age or medical condition, consistently melt away pound after pound of health-damaging, confidence-shattering fat from your face, belly, arms, hips, and thighs. This method is 10 times more effective than any existing solution and means you'll never have to step foot into a gym or doctor's office ever again, as this can easily be done from home. The crazy part is that this easy rice hack only takes a few seconds to do, and people have started to see the fat melt off their belly in a matter of days. So if you are struggling with stubborn fat that simply doesn't want to go away, diabetes or prediabetes, cholesterol and blood pressure issues, or any other type of weight-related issue, then this discovery could change your life. I urge you, stop everything you're doing and click the link below to watch a short free special video that'll show you exactly how you can start using this method tomorrow morning. If it's already worked for more than 234,500 people, then it can surely work for you too. Even if you've been overweight for 5, 10, even 20 years, imagine being able to lose the weight you've always dreamed of while enjoying a surge of teenage-like energy and stamina, regaining your confidence to go clothes shopping, and resurrecting the passion in your marriage. The billion-dollar weight loss and pharmaceutical industries do not want you to see this video and discover the fastest, most powerful metabolism supercharging secret on the planet. So please watch this free presentation today before it's too late. Take what you've learned from this video and tell one other person to keep this vital conversation going. Together, we can make America healthier.
Like, oh, absolutely. You know, even the depiction of Jesus was switched over to the face that became the global popular face. That was actually Caesar Borgia, who was actually one of the sons of an actual pope, and killed his own brother to try to take his place. This guy was just an evil, brutal, killing ruler. His father commissioned the artist to paint his image as the image of Jesus, and that image still propagates the planet till this very day. So the image that a lot of people are praying to is not the Jesus that they think it is, but actually a natural born killer.
And it is that's true, because I mean it was just propaganda. That was the propaganda of the day, were these masterworks of paintings and you know, frescoes and things like that. That was the propaganda of the day. That was the art of, that's all the only way they could get messages like this out there. So because of this one artist, you have these images. But generally speaking, if you go back far enough, I mean, Jesus wasn't a white guy with blue eyes. That doesn't make it. He just wasn't, right?
Yeah, he wasn't a white guy with blue eyes. I mean, you read the description, he had bronze feet and he had tight curly hair. I mean, so clearly you're talking about somebody that looks like they come from that region, which really is the northern tip of Africa, AKA Arabia, in that region. And I've been there, of course, now dozens of times. I mean, all those people, the people who are homegrown, they all look the same. Matter of fact, when I go there, they go, "You my brother, you my brother." You know? I say they want to sell me something. Of course, I'm your brother. Now, but,
of
the
course, of course.
But the point is, you get it. I mean, obviously, he wasn't a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, but that's a depiction that took hold and took root and has been burnt into the minds. What a great marketing campaign. I mean, you want to talk about applied neuroscience. That image is burnt into the brains of people before they're even conceived. When they come out of the womb, they're looking for that image. So they did a great marketing and propaganda campaign with that image. They burnt it into the brains of people so deeply, it's embedded in our DNA.
Well, I mean, look at Santa Claus. I mean, the image of Santa Claus was basically a marketing campaign from Coca-Cola, and that's the Santa Claus we all know and love. You know, that's the image. The jolly old man with the white, with a big white beard, and that was just an image created by Coca-Cola. Am I wrong with that? But that's now propagated. So now that is in quote unquote Saint Nick.
Yeah. It started off actually in the UK with a gentleman, and then Coca-Cola kind of adopted it and then enhanced it to what they're liking, the way they wanted it to be. A chubby guy. It was first a skinny guy, but they adopted it, they enhanced it to what they wanted it to be, but it took hold again. Like you said, it's great marketing, great propaganda, subliminal information, subliminal messages and teachings, and it just gets birthed into the genome, and it passes on from generation to generation. Same thing happened with this Jesus figure. His name isn't even Jesus. His name was Yeshua.
Yeshua,
okay? Yeah, that's the actual name. And so, but again, Jesus, the J is a new letter. It didn't even exist until recently. I mean, so we're talking about, okay, what is really the name? Isus. When you look into the root word of that, and you go back into some of the ancient tongues, you find out it's Hail Zeus. So people that are calling on the name of Jesus all the time, they're calling for help from Zeus, which is actually a converted name from the Sumerian pantheon. So they're calling on Enlil, is what they're calling on. They're not calling on any son of the creator of the universe. And this is why a lot of prayers don't actually work. People don't understand the power of speech and then calling on names and the somatic frequencies they create. Then when you're completely ignorant to what you're really saying, it's no wonder why billions of prayers go up every single day all around the world. But then again, look at the state of the world on a daily basis. You can clearly see that if somebody has a positive outcome, more than likely it's just luck.
And I know this conversation will probably be upsetting to some. And look, I'm a recovering Catholic. I've said I've been a recovering Catholic for quite some time. So I lived and breathed this, went to Catholic school, had the nuns, the whole ball of wax. And I just hope that this conversation just sparks an interest to investigate it for yourself. Nothing that we're saying here is not investigatable on your own. And you can go out and look and read. I mean, just even go to Wikipedia, for God's sakes. You just read about the Council of Nicaea. I mean, you just start reading it on Wikipedia, which isn't the perfect, research thing, but still basics. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is really what happened. Like, this is, so it wasn't, so the Bible is not God's word. It was a bunch of dudes that got together and left out stuff like the Book of Enoch, left out other things because it didn't kind of work in there. The concept of reincarnation were left out because that doesn't work. Because if you think you can come back, I really can't control you as easily, all these little ideas, but you just have to do your own research. I hope this sparks a little bit of interest for people to do so.
And I want to add one thing to this before we go on too. I want people to understand, I'm not an atheist.
At Toyota Service Centers, you can count on genuine parts and certified technicians, like this guy. Brace ya.
Stop into a service center today for our brake savings event. Toyota Service Centers. Keep your a Toyota.
I believe in a creator of the universe.
Yeah.
Because the quantum physics proves that we're living inside of a creation. There's no way to dispute that. There's no way to doubt it. We're living in a programmed holographic light matrix. That is a method used for this creation, but we are in this. It's created by an entity, and believe that there is a God. I just believe that the biblical version is not specifically talking about the creator of the universe. I believe those are the words of men about men that have manipulated it to be God. And actually, the word God in the Bible is mistranslated by accident on purpose. The original root word for that is gods with an S. And everywhere where you see God singular is actually supposed to have an S on the end. So there's so much going on. There's been tainted so much by man, but I do believe that there is a God. But again, you have to research everything that you believe in, especially if you're looking for this information to carry you into eternity. You should know every little tiny detail about it. You shouldn't just take it, point in fact, from somebody standing at a pulpit. You should be the expert on it yourself. After all, it is your own eternity.
Right, obviously. And then also the problem that a lot of people have with just what you just said is that, like, well, my parents told me, and that nice gentleman who's my priest told me, and my whole family listen, at the end of the day, investigate for yourself and what connects you better to the creator. If going to church every day with a community to pray to a creator that works for you, God bless. It's not hurting anybody else. Hey man, do you. But if you are interested a little bit in these ideas, try to investigate them yourself, because it might not be pleasant. It wasn't for me when I first started going down these roads. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I started reading, when I started reading Indian philosophies and just going around the world and just started listening to other religions. I'm like, well, they all can't be right and they all can't be wrong. Like, there has to be something here. And that's started the journey where I'm at today. But I hope that people take that we're not just bashing the Catholic Church, though it is bashable for a lot of the horrors that it has done in its existence. I just want you to kind of realize what is really going on, and shows like this and this information, the work you're doing, the work I'm doing, is putting this information out there so people could just start going, but by the way, we're not starting a revolution. People are leaving the church in droves. I mean, the whole priest thing with the abuse, and I mean, they have a problem. And I don't think I don't know, I don't know. Do you think they'll be around in 200-300 years? You know, is it?
I seriously doubt it. No, they're not. They can't be. Listen, there's too much. They've paid billions of dollars in settlements, billions in settlements for pedophilia and sexual abuse. You can't persist along that path. You know, and so at the rate that they're going with what they're doing, they can't persist too much longer. They still, however, right now hold a lot of power. I mean, even the governments of the world contact the Vatican before they go to war. A lot of people don't even know this. They contact to speak to the Black Pope, not a black man, but a Black Pope. He wears the black garment, okay? He's called a super Jesuit with a sworn oath, a very special sworn oath that I've posted online many times. Maybe if we have time, another time we can read the entire oath that they have to read. It's pretty dark. It's a pretty dark oath, and it comes directly from their information, so it's not fabricated or somebody made it up online. And what's interesting is the governments of the world, the superpowers of the world, they contact and get approval for the war from the super Jesuit Black Pope. Now, think about that kind of power. Think about that level of power. People don't even know a Black Pope exists. They don't even know what a Black Pope is. But when you start looking it up and then research the oath that's taken, it is so dark, it'll make you feel sick on the inside. That's how dark it is.
Now, let me ask you, we've talked a little bit about the Great Pyramids and Egypt's temples and pyramids and things like that. Before we dive into a little bit more of that, have you studied anything in India? The temples, and because that is the temples and the archaeological sites in India are not talked about that much in these conversations. It's always Mesoamerica. It's always the Great Pyramids, but even pyramids in Japan, in China, in other areas. Go back to Tepe, obviously now, but generally speaking, I don't hear a lot of conversations about India. But they have some remarkable temples, archaeological sites, information in those temples. How they made some of those things is absolutely insane. So what information do you have about the Hindu temples or Indian temples and cities and archaeological?
Yeah, I'm doing an amazing, I have a new TV show coming out called Anunnaki History on Forbidden Knowledge TV. And we're just in the beginning stages of filming. And one of the things that I'm doing in one of my episodes is I'm tying together the Kailash temples of India. The Kailash temple is literally a mountain that's carved from the outside going in.
Oh yeah, that's gorgeous.
So as you start from the outside, if the first cut is off by 1 millimeter, you can't finish this to perfection. You can't finish the incredible openings and the reliefs and all the incredible designs on the inner walls and the perfectly square way. You can't do it. And so this is evidence of some type of either super guided laser technique or whatever it is, but I'm going to document them. I'm going to look for the tool marks, and I'm going to compare the Kailash temples to Petra, Jordan, to Abu Simbel in Egypt, to the Lalibela temples of Africa. They're all made with the same exact cutting technique and the same exact, I believe, cutting tool. And any single one of those structures, you can't be 1 millimeter off when you start the first cut. And so I'm going to be documenting and talking about that. But these temples in India are they're mind-blowing how they're created, the incredible attention to detail from a lot of the carved rock and a lot of the reliefs. Again, these are, in my personal opinion, some of them go back thousands of years, and I believe they're directly related to these Anunnaki people who created this Atlantean civilization. Depending on where they were in the world, they had their own particular style, same construction technique, but their own style and look of how the reliefs and how the design work would go. And I believe that India was a location where they definitely walked amongst men, and they built some of the most incredible structures that exist on the planet. Like you said, hardly ever talked about. But I'm going there next year to document these and pull the whole thing together and connect the dots.
What is interesting about the sites that you're talking about, I know exactly which one you're talking about. And for people listening, it's literally, imagine you built a temple, and temple is not even a word I would use for these things, and you carved it out of a mountain as one solid piece. So it's a solid piece. So I got to go see the David. That was one solid piece of marble he made the David out of. Okay. And that's impressive as hell. I mean, you sit in front of the David and you go, Jesus, it's insane. Now do that with a mountain, and that every little thing has to be cut or carved perfectly, because if you like some parts inside the temple, because you can walk inside these structures that have been carved out of the mountain. Imagine, I'm just trying to think, okay, so a dude starts carving up here and starts chiseling there, and it's all perfect. And when they go inside, they start chiseling, and they didn't go too far and bust a hole through the roof or anything like that. It's all perfect. And it looks, we couldn't do that today if we even tried. Everyone always talks about, can we build the pyramids today? Could you? I don't know, probably not the way they did it, not with that kind of precise engineering, but this is literally impossible. Like, this is not even There's no technology today. Would you agree? There's like,
Doesn't exist.
you could argue, you can maybe try to lift some 20 tons, 80 ton blocks and granite, and you might be able to do the pyramids, and that's a big if. But this stuff, absolutely, and it's not just one of them. They're
Yeah, I know.
all over the
It's a
damn
whole
place.
complex. It's a whole complex.
Yes, there's a bunch of them.
I mean, and it's like they did it because it was easy. You see, they did
Right.
this because it was easy. Can you imagine the excavation process in today's world? How much mass of rock and stone
Where
would
is
need to be excavated?
Right. Where is it now?
Just that in itself is a mind-boggling paradigm. But they were able to do it, and they were able to do it very easily. So yeah, I'm going to be going there to document these temples, these ancient structures, and connect the dots between the same type of construction techniques used around the world. In my new TV series, it's going to be an amazing series. People have to watch it. Anunnaki History is coming very soon.
Have you been feeling sad most of the time, losing interest in things you once cared about? You may be experiencing these and other symptoms that are difficult to understand. These symptoms are worth exploring with a doctor. Learn more about major depressive disorder and a potential treatment option at managingdepression.us.
And is that in Petra in Jordan, which was, if I'm not mistaken, they used Petra in Last Crusade, right? Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, when they go in to go get the Holy Grail. That is Petra. So for everybody listening, that's what Petra is. That also is carved out of a mountain, right?
Yes, correct. Carved out of a mountain. Again, you cannot be off 1 millimeter when you start your first cut, and you have to have precision, because the most important thing about, you said, these places, these structures have rooms and openings. So now you have to really understand the material that you're working with, and you have to understand gravity, weight, and stressors. You have to understand this, because if you don't, now you're at a risk of collapse. So you really have to have advanced construction knowledge and advanced knowledge of the material you're working on. How much weight and pressure can a particular beam handle? How much weight is dispersed over the area of a particular amount of mass when you create an opening? All this has to be like calculated, otherwise it will collapse, and you've done it for nothing. So, oh man,
it's insane. And then also, where did the rock go? Where did the rock go? Because I mean, look, where did the rock go? Like, they pulled all, and this is, like you said, there's a complex of this. So arguably, let's say they did it with the techniques that we have today, which would be insane. You basically would have to have thousands of Michelangelos running around carving perfectly all the time. Where did the rock go? That mass amount of rock, they didn't ship it somewhere. It is non-existent anywhere within hundreds of miles of those areas, because the rocks would have had to have been, they didn't pulverize them to dirt. And if they did, that's impressive. But where's the, like, where are the rocks? So when I was in the catacombs in Naples, you're talking about, because it's underground, and it's, I think it was Roman. They started off Roman, and like it had multiple generations of people trying to like build upon them. And you look inside, it's beautiful, but it's very crude. I mean, nothing is perfect. There's just holes where bodies were going. The roof is like, more natural. It's not like perfect. It's very crude, and that's what we're talking about. 1,000 to 1,200 years ago, extremely crude kind of technology to build this stuff. That was literally somebody just going in and just chiseling stuff out. And I'd assume that there might have even been a little bit of opening there to begin with. That there was a cave down there anyway, and they started building off of that. Yeah, because it's not like a rock. So what we're talking about is, I just can't even understand how they even begin to do it. What do you, in your wildest dreams, how do you think it was done?
Well, I think that they discovered a way to maybe even compress atoms to the point where they can remove empty space in between atoms. And so imagine if you, of course, we know that atoms are 99.999% empty space. And so to give you an idea what that means, I can take all 8 billion people on Earth and remove the empty space within their atoms. I can fit everyone into one sugar cube. So that's how empty space is between atoms. Now imagine you have the capability of removing the empty space in the atoms in those stones and those rocks, where instead of having to excavate billions of tons of rocks or hundreds of thousands of tons of rocks, you now just remove the empty space in their atoms and you smash them down into absolute tiny particles of dust, and that are still going to be heavy because the mass will still be there, but the size will be very much smaller. And then you can use some other type of advanced technology to move them out of there, or maybe just leave them there. Who knows? But that may be one way that they did it. They have some type of a super sophisticated laser guided cutting tool, which is already set in some type of a program that's already in some type of a computing system that has a pre-done layout or schematic diagram, a blueprint for this carving and this cutting. And it goes in as some type of a machine that goes in and does all this incredible work. And then everything else is just, the excavation is just collapsed into, particles, heavy particles, but still particles nonetheless. That's how I think they possibly have done it. I think that might be even the future of waste management. Imagine instead of having piles and piles of garbage, you just utilize the capability of removing the empty space in the atoms, and you can turn 100,000 tons of garbage into a couple of crumbs.
So it's almost like a 3D printing technology, but not printing, carving, a 3D carving technology almost.
Right. Right.
Where,
Exactly.
where they're building it out. That is absolutely fascinating. Now, let me ask you though, how do you think that this technology or these temples in India, because you're doing this show, these temples and sites in India are connected to the pyramids, to Petra and these other, and even Mesoamerica?
Yeah. One of the biggest connections you can make with the temples located in India and literally all around the world, when you look at the Earth's magnetic field grid, the map that show you of where the magnetic field whips out of the Earth and creates the magnetosphere, you'll find that in the places where a lot of these magnetic fields come out of the Earth, and you overlay another map on top that shows you where a lot of the temples and pyramids are located, all of a sudden, you find that like 90% of them are on top of these magnetic fields. So they're connected by this magnetism. Somehow they know, or they knew, where these magnetic fields were, and they harnessed the power, the natural power of the Earth itself in the construction process. So in some way, it was so important that they harnessed the magnetic field, potentially to find a way to reverse the spin of the atom, to maybe reduce gravity of some of the stones. There's something where these magnetic fields worked along with their technology, which we don't have access to, which is now long gone. But I think their technology worked along with Earth's magnetic field because you have these super megalithic structures directly on top of them. Even look at Lebanon, at Baalbek. I mean, you have super megalithic stones up on top of other megalithic stones. And the only way to do it is some type of anti-gravity or materialization technique. But again, directly on top of a huge magnetic field. So the pyramids in India are connected to the others by magnetic fields.
Now, I have to ask you this because this is something else I observed when I was in France and when I was in Italy, is in almost every city I went to, there was an Egyptian obelisk in the center of town. And I'm not talking, I mean, in the Vatican, there's one. In Rome, there's one. There's many in Rome. I went to Bologna. There was one in Bologna. There was one in Modena. Like, you just start, and I'm like, in France, I was just driving around Paris. There's one, and I'm just in the, why are there Egyptian obelisks everywhere? And we even have an obelisk, which is the great one in Washington Monument, is a giant obelisk in our major city. What is it about these things that are there?
The obelisks are remnants of an ancient golden age that existed, where a lot of wisdom and knowledge from the brick masons was passed down. And they are well aware of this. And a lot of the knowledge that was passed down from the purpose and use of the obelisk, all the additional construction in those ancient cities, was passed down to brick masons over generations. And those people ended up becoming parts of governments that they were overseeing construction for new cities and so forth. And it's a paying oath to the ancient brick masons and the knowledge and wisdom that they've shared and saved and held back from the general public over the years. The actual obelisks were wireless receivers for wireless electricity and even frequencies for sound. And so the Great Pyramid, for example, would generate this wireless electricity, which would shoot up out of the apex. The obelisk, they're all crystal granite. They would capture this ambient electricity from the atmosphere. And then if you had something called a djed, which you see all over Egypt, and even in some other cultures, like in Afghanistan, you can find the djed etched into stone as well, and also in Turkey. What happens is this djed would capture this ambient electricity. It looks like a Tesla coil. And then there's a cord coming out of it, which connect to their gold electroplating devices. We know they had electricity, and they use them with the djed because depictions of it are all over Egypt, and the gold plating is all over Egypt from ancient times. So we know they use electric gold plating, so it's not even a mystery. Of course, they had light bulbs, which are etched into stone in the crypt located underneath the Temple of Dendera and a few other places as well. So they had, but they all of those depictions are connected to a djed. The djed will receive wireless electricity from these obelisks. So these obelisks were pillars of power. And so they have now taken that as an archetype and a metaphor to put that in their locations and say, hey, we have power, because that's what they did in ancient times. They're showcasing their power. If you look at Teotihuacan in Mexico, the pyramid complex there, which mimics identical to Giza Plateau in Africa and Egypt, you find out that you take a map of Rome's courtyard and overlay it over Teotihuacan, it's a perfect match. The courtyard is a perfect match to the courtyard of Teotihuacan, right up until you get too close to the Pyramid of the Moon. The Pyramid of the Sun is behind it. And so then you have the obelisk directly in the center. So even the the Vatican, they've mimicked even the courtyard of Teotihuacan, located all the way in Mexico, and they put an obelisk dead center. So they know what they're doing. They're paying oath to tribute to the ancient past and the ancient knowledge of the brick masons, and they're showcasing these obelisks as a symbol of power.
Interesting, very interesting. And another thing that was interesting is, as I was doing some more research into the Great Pyramid, not only have they never found any hieroglyphs in the Great Pyramid, so the whole tomb thing is a ridiculous idea that has perpetrated from a couple of white guys from the 1800s who said this must be where but even though they never found anybody dead there or any hieroglyphs. I don't know about you. If I would have built a pyramid, the Egyptians were they love talking about their stuff, and their hieroglyphs are everywhere, but yet in the pyramids, none. So that's interesting. But I was looking at the other day is inside the pyramids, how did they light while they worked inside the pyramids? Because there is no fire, soot, reminiscences like there are in other temples that you could obviously see that they use fire to light the way. There's nothing like that in the Great Pyramid, correct?
Nothing like that. As a matter of fact, even in the other temples, the fire and soot you see, that came from the Coptic Christians long after, the ones that were hiding from the Romans. They were hiding from Romans. So if you go back prior, because they've been doing a reclamation project to clean up a lot of that soot, when they clean it off, you discover that in ancient times when that stuff was originally built, they didn't even have soot then. So they were actually using light bulbs in all these ancient temples. And in the Great Pyramid, of course, there's no evidence of any soot whatsoever. So we know that they had harnessed the power of electricity. The Great Pyramid itself is built on a base of magnetized crystal granite. Now, when the Nile used to run up close to the pyramid complex in ancient times, that water was channeled into these aquifers directly underneath the Great Pyramid. When you have running water moving underneath magnetized crystal granite, you create something called physiostatic electricity. The ions are then pushed up in through the granite, up into the chamber. Some of the water would push down into the Queen's chamber, which was an electrolysis device which extracted hydrogen atoms. The rest of the ions would get pushed up through the Grand Gallery, where there were resonating rods, and slots are still there for those rods to push it up into the King's chamber. The King's chamber is magnetized crystal granite, a gigantic block wall with a 2-to-1 ratio on the inside. And in that room is a stone box, which they were claiming is a sarcophagus. I can't even fit in that box, okay? If I get in that box, my knees have to be bent.
Right.
So it's not a sarcophagus, but that box is the same exact dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. That's what sat in that box. And that would step the power up one more level and send the energy through the top plank of top of that stone, which was a crystal granite top, and it would go up through the apex, which was gold, and that would send wireless electricity out into the atmosphere, and then to be captured by the obelisk. And so the other part, the Queen's chamber, would extract the hydrogen atoms from the water and then shoot the hydrogen beams through the shafts that were pointed at star systems, Aldebaran, Sirius, Orion, and so forth, on different alignments. Why hydrogen? How do we try to communicate with aliens today? We transmit information piggybacked on the hydrogen frequency. Why do we do that? Because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. And so that's how we feel that we can communicate with ET. Well, they were already doing this in the ancient past. And why were they doing it? Because on specific alignments with those shafts, they were sending information and updates about the breakaway civilization here on Earth directly through the pyramid shafts. So the Great Pyramid was a multifunctional stone computer and also a power generator.
If in today's world, if everybody left the planet today and a tribe found a cell tower, and is the biggest thing for 200 miles, and they go, well, what do you think this was for? What do you think these people used it for? If we told you, we bounced, then we talked on the phone, and there's this thing, and we also did internet. What's the internet? It seems insane to somebody. So what you're saying could sound insane, but yet try to explain a cell tower or an electricity grid to a bushman who has never experienced any of this. It's not as far-fetched, it's all, they're all hypotheses. You don't know exactly if that happened because you weren't there, but this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure things out. Everyone's trying to figure things out what happened back in the day.
Why did we choose Safe Light? Driving around is how we get our baby to sleep. So when our windshield cracked, we trusted the experts. They focus on our safety, so we can focus on this little guy.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
There's another thing I discovered in my journeys, which is, have you heard of the labyrinth in Egypt? There's supposedly a giant underground labyrinth in Egypt that was supposed to be like, there's talks about it, there's history about it, that people would go down underneath it. It was supposedly a massive underground thing, and they found some remnants of it. I don't know where in Egypt, but they've started to find some of it. But it was massive. Do you know a little bit about that?
I wrote about it in my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets.
Okay.
And so this huge underground labyrinth exists exactly what Thoth the Atlanteans said it did. It starts actually underneath the Great Pyramid, and it spreads out for miles underneath the Giza Plateau. It goes on for miles. And some of those tunnels go all the way from Giza, all the way to the Pyramid of Ur, the Ziggurat of Ur in Iraq. You can go from Giza to Iraq underground, okay? this labyrinth is massive, and in order to build it and know where you're going, you have to have some idea or concept of, from an aerial view, of mapping and understanding angles and degrees, and of course, again, knowing the material so you can prevent a collapse. But he calls it, the beginning part of this labyrinth is called the halls of Amenti, just one of many halls of Amenti that actually exist. And they discovered these halls that connect to this labyrinth years ago, which they have a sketched image of them, and I have it in my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablet. So this has existed for eons, this underground labyrinth of passageways and tunnels that lead out, I mean, for miles and miles. It's incredible, underneath the sands of Giza.
Do you think that these were built after the Younger Dryas collapse or the collapse of Atlantis, and whoever started to build this, they're like, look, we can't have this happen again, so let's build this underground city, so if something does happen up top, at least we have a fighting chance underneath? Do you think that's what the case?
Oh, no doubt. I believe it definitely was built after the Younger Dryas. They may have even knew the Younger Dryas, or they may have known about this pre-knowledge of this strike, this asteroid strike that was going to come and hit and create a type of a catastrophe, an extinction level event was coming, and may have started building these underground tunnels from then. Because all of a sudden in Turkey, around the same time frame, you have Derin Kuyu, 30,000 people underground, 14,000 ventilation shafts.
Yeah.
You have other areas throughout Turkey going all the way down into the Middle East, where the people have built these underground shelters that can hold thousands of people underground with ventilation shafts all over the place. You have the labyrinth underneath Giza that goes out for miles and miles, where a person can literally travel from one place to the other without ever coming above ground. And then in the Americas, you have the story from the indigenous tribes of the Americas about these people who took them into these underground caverns to hide from something. They never specified exactly what it was, but to hide from something, and it saved their lives. So it must have been part of this catastrophe that happened. But all of a sudden, all around the world, around the same time, on several continents, you can see that people were going underground, almost a foreknowledge of this global catastrophic event coming.
What are the materials that they're using underneath in this underground complex in Egypt? What kind of materials were they carving out there?
It's the stone that's already down there. So whatever that sandstone or whatever's down there, they understood it. They know how to. And what's interesting is when you look at some of, like, if you go into the Serapeum, which I call Enki's Halls of Amenti, like that's underground in Saqqara, when you see the perfect archways that are carved out and the alcoves that are carved out, again, this is almost like Kailash. Whatever they did, they knew how to cut this stone in a certain way where they almost vitrified it as they cut. So as they're cutting this tunnel underground, they're vitrifying it at the same time with high levels of heat, which reduces the amount of extraction of mass and brick and rock that need to be taken out, because you're actually searing and burning it as you bore through at the same time. And it makes these perfect cuts, which are evident at the Serapeum in Saqqara. So I think they utilize the same exact technique. They look like giant halls. And when you go to look at the image that was sketched from the one that was discovered under Giza, gigantic halls, perfectly arched underground with the existing rock that's already there.
The idea of a lot of people talk about the ideas of these, they moved these giant 20-ton, 40-ton, 60-ton monolithic blocks using horses or using people and using things. And it's laughable. It is laughable, but you could argue it. But once you get to these obelisks that were 120, 150 tons, wood doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. No. You can't move those things anymore at that point with wood and pulleys. It's just not capable of being done anymore. So yeah. I've also studied these kind of like these junkyards of like obelisks that never left out of the ground, and big chunks of other things that just didn't make it. But the drill marks and the tool marks are so precise. They look like something that we have today. In some areas, you're just like, I don't even know if we had something like this. You could even see where the granite or the rock is cut, and they're like, oops, and they pulled back out, and there's like I cut the wrong area. What do you think about that?
Oh, they had high-tech tools back then that were capable of cutting solid granite. And they had some type of laser etching tool to etch all the hieroglyphs on them as well, because everyone is extremely exquisite and perfect. Like there's no, they're perfect. And then the story that they want to tell you is that they took this, 10-ton thing and they dumped it on the back of a boat and took it down the Nile. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. They utilized some form of levitation or anti-gravity or something that helped to reduce the weight of the object. And what's interesting is, so every time I travel to these places, I take an old-fashioned compass. And when you get up to certain areas of the stone, all of a sudden, the needle starts to move. You're like, well, why is the needle moving? Why isn't the needle? I'm not changing my direction, but when I get closer to this stone, the needle starts to move. There's something has been done to the atoms in this stone to reverse the polarity. And so they had to have some type of whether it was a frequency technology, a magnetic technology, in some way they altered the atomic structure in the stone, possibly, hypothesis, to get them to be lighter, to be able to maneuver them around, maybe not completely weightless, but in some way that allowed them to move them without breaking them all over the place.
I've heard you talk in other conversations about the healing properties of the temples of Egypt. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Listen, there's a temple there which we're trying to find. I saw it in 2014, and we haven't been able to get the name, but there's many of them that you can go to. When you walk through these particular hallways, they're very narrow hallways with gigantic megalithic crystal granite on both sides. And as you walk through these hallways, you touch the walls with both hands as you walk down the hallway. People will be lined up behind you doing the same thing. And you would be treated by electromagnetism into your body from these gigantic slabs, these megalithic slabs of granite, magnetized crystal granite. And in one of these locations, so many people had gone down that hallway with their hands and their fingertips on the walls to the point where you can see the grooves of fingers in solid granite. That's how many over thousands of years have walked down these hallways. So I'm looking forward to finding that exact location where the most impressive one was located when I go in October, and documenting it and filming it and bringing back all that knowledge and information to the people when I get back in the end of October.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for doing that work, my friend. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And you were saying a second ago about the perfection of some of these carvings in these statues, and in the Vatican Museum, I saw some fairly large Egyptian statues, like where the pharaoh's face and stuff, and it's carved out of, I don't know if it's black. It was a black stone, which I heard was even harder than granite. It's like on the hardness scale, it's like 9. Diamonds are 10. It's like at a 9.
Yeah, probably diorite or andesite.
Yeah, something like that. It was the black stone, and the face of these are so perfectly balanced. Yeah. They look like literally identical, left to the right. You can interchange them. It looks like a complete mirror. That isn't capable of being done by hand. Even Michelangelo couldn't do that. It's just the level of precision there. It's mathematical. We're talking about centimeters and smaller than centimeters on both. So it looks like it's something you could cut it in half, and it's a mirror of itself. How can anyone even conceive to think that was done by hand? And you look at the work, you just like the way the dress or whatever they were wearing, the skirts or the adorning, the things that they were wearing, so much detail. So how, man, how? You know, and again,
it's so exquisite when you.
No. But I think again, go ahead.
I was gonna say you can only hypothesize that, a couple ways. One, obviously, is some type of a laser guided tool that already had a computer program in it to etch a specific face. If it's not a laser, maybe it's something similar to a laser, or could it also be a special technique that they use to melt rock and make it molten without destroying the fundamental basis or the chemical compound of it, and then put it into a mold, let it cure, and then boom, you pop it out of the mold, and now here you have it, right? So there's a couple different, we could throw around different hypotheses, but we know for a fact it definitely wasn't done by hand.
Yeah, because I mean, again, seeing all of these masterworks by Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all, you start seeing the work, the craftsmanship of all of these Renaissance sculptors. They're stunning work, man. I mean, it is remarkable work, but they're not perfect. They're not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be this kind of almost computer-esque style of sculpture. It's a more naturalistic sculpture. Like, you and I don't have perfectly symmetrical faces. Your left eye is not exactly where your right eye is. Very few people do. So it's not perfect. Nature is not like that. So to show that, and these things are remarkable. One last question, because I know you got to go and I got thousands of questions, and you and I can talk for hours and hours, brother. I heard somewhere that, let me know, is Shakespeare connected to the pyramids of Giza in one way, shape, or form with his work? Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard about it, but I never really dug into it deeply. That's something, an additional thing for me to look into research. I haven't dug into his information quite as deeply with that connection to find out exactly specifically what it was. It would be very interesting to find out, though, because I mean, obviously he came about thousands of years after the pyramids and so forth. So I've got to really look into it, though.
And then how about Da Vinci? Da Vinci's artwork. How is it connected? Is there a connection to ancient Egypt's wisdom and I mean, because obviously Da Vinci encoded everything.
Oh, he encoded everything. This guy was an absolute. He might be an alien.
I mean, he was at a whole other level.
Man, another level. He was so far ahead of his time. Maybe he came from the future. I don't know, but when you look at the Vitruvian Man and some of the drawings and sketchings that he's done, it lays out the Vitruvian Man, for example, when you circle the square and you create a flower of life pattern inside of there, you get the dimensions of the Great Pyramid at Giza. But not only that, you begin to get the dimensions and angles of most of the pyramids around the entire planet. And where the lines intersect and cross for the vesica piscis, you then know if you make it into a global scale, you scale up to a global size, that one image, all of a sudden you start to find temples and pyramids, even across the oceans where some cities have sunk and so forth. You find remnants of civilizations on that grid. So it's pretty crazy. You can extract that directly from the Vitruvian Man. So it's just like mind-blowing, the connection. I don't think it's a coincidence.
And then let's not even get into the paintings of like the Last Supper and just the you look at the Last Supper, the perfection in the art and how the angles all you're just like, you get that at a completely other level. I did get to see the Mona Lisa for 5 seconds before the crowd was insane there. By the way, the Louvre, the worst museum in the world.
Yeah.
I can't stand the Louvre. It's like you can't see anything. It's insane. It's horrible. But I did get to see the Mona Lisa. Right, absolutely not. But the Mona Lisa, you see that, you're like, okay, I see what the hoopla is about. You know,
right. Yeah.
There's something there. I don't know what it is. The perfection of it is. It's a pretty remarkable piece, without question.
Yep, it sure is. Yeah,
so Billy, tell me where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Well, please go to forbiddenknowledge.com with the number 4. When you see me do this, it's not a gang sign. It's my 4 for forbidden knowledge. Okay. Some people you got to explain.
West Side.
Yeah, all right.
West Side.
Guys, 4 forbidden knowledge. Yeah. So forbiddenknowledge.com. Of course, get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on your app store, any app store, Samsung TV, Apple TV, Roku, iOS, Google Play, Amazon Fire TV, the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on your app store. So 5-star app on every platform. So we really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Get a 7-day free trial and watch the Forbidden Conscious Awards we just had in Miami, Florida.
And do you have any party messages for the audience, Billy?
I would just say continue to keep researching, digging, and asking questions. Don't take anything for face value. Even the things that you hear me say, just go and start looking them up for yourselves. Write down keywords in my statements and my comments, and go start digging and looking and researching, and become your own researcher and begin to learn how to answer your own questions.
Billy, I appreciate you and the work you're doing in the world. We will have another session coming soon, man, because I love talking to you, brother.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.
I love Kajabi because it allows me to run my entire online course business in one place. I've got a 7-figure business utilizing courses, certainly membership, podcast.
What we tend to not understand is that time really doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
And like you said, we've been given this functional arrow of time, which puts us in one specific direction so that we can organize our thoughts and our days and our years and weeks and what we're going to do and what we're going to meet up with somebody and everything else. So we have this ability to coordinate and collaborate with each other, like how we're here today at this specific time. However, if you understand that time is also an illusion, it's something that you can use as a tool. But if you also understand that it's an illusion, then you can actually master time, and you can maximize what you're doing on this planet.
I'm 19 keys, and this is
High level conversation. Tap in with the guys. Peace, family. Welcome back to another high level conversation. Today we have a powerful presentation, a very powerful energy, spirit, man, guide, scholar, polymath, intellectual, executive, actor, producer, author, you understand me, TV host, academia, a man really whom those who have seen needs no introduction. You understand me? A very extraterrestrial intellect. You understand me? A person that can dive in multidimensional areas. You understand me? And a person that I don't have to hold back with whatsoever. You understand me? This is a man who has, secured funding to build underground cities in Georgia. You understand me? A person who is a 2-time best-selling author. You understand me? Of Woke Doesn't Mean Broke, and of the Emerald Tablets, and also the founder of Forbidden Knowledge. You may have seen him on the Travel Channel. You may have seen him on the History Channel. You understand me? You may have seen him in another dimension when you just happen to be popping some shrooms or something and traveling through somewhere. And Billy Carson was right there floating next to you, giving you some guide. You understand me? This is a powerful brother. Not only has he found things here on Earth, but he's actually found things out in space. You understand me? And we're going to dive deep into exactly what that means. So today, I want to introduce you to none other than the most powerful, prolific brother known as Mr. Billy Carson.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you for the great introduction.
Absolutely, man. You know, I make sure I have very intelligent people, you understand me, who require a great introduction, you understand me. For those, of course, like I said, who know you, you don't require any introduction, you understand me. You are a man, a great platform, you understand me, that stands on his own merit based on the knowledge that you possess, research, investigate, and deliver to the masses.
Thanks, man.
Today, man, I want to have a roundabout conversation about a multitude of different subjects here, high-level conversations. I like to have an actual cipher, you understand me, where we build and we collide and create new universes, you understand me, a university of thoughts. And first thing I wanted to talk about was time itself.
Yeah.
You know, and the ideas of time. There's a lot of people that's trapped into increments of time that they have to work in, you understand me, from a 9 to 5 position, and they have to live within windows of hours and dissect their days based on that. You understand me? And the unfortunate reality of it is that most people will never have a true understanding of life because they're living on borrowed time. You understand me? And so I'm always working to help present perspective and observation on where people can understand the laws of time a little more. You understand me? Especially as we enter into 4th and 5th dimensional phases here, you understand me, on this planet Earth, you understand me, or the universe, as we will. You know, human beings, you know, we're very interesting, you know, beings. You understand me? Like, just the idea that we allow someone else to decide what time is for us is a very interesting thing. Right? From Julius Caesar to the Roman Pope with his papal bulls deciding, you know, what is a 365 calendar, what is talking about 7-day weeks and 60 seconds and 60 minutes. And we say, okay, let's go along with it. You know, and we don't realize that it speeds up, you know, being born to when you leave this place. You know, and then we already have expectations on what life is going to be because there's other people that tell us what it is, when we're going to die, when we get old, when we're going to feel a certain way. So it sets up a curation for us to die a certain way and at a certain speed. I want to hear what your interpretation of what time is first.
Yeah, well, you know, this is a very deep question. I've talked about this so many times in different lectures and workshops, you know, because for people in the 3rd dimension, we're in the 3rd dimension, what we tend to not understand is that time really doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
And like you said, we've been given this functional arrow of time, which puts us in one specific direction so that we can organize our thoughts and our days and our years and weeks and what we're going to do and where we're going to meet up with somebody and everything else. So we have this ability to coordinate and collaborate with each other, like how we're here today at this specific time. However, if you understand that time is also an illusion, it's something that you can use as a tool, but if you also understand that it's an illusion, then you can actually master your time and you can maximize what you're doing on this planet. Because if you go any high in all the higher dimensions, you know, we're in the 3rd.
Means, can you give us a breakdown?
Okay, sure. So if you draw a line on a piece of paper, that's the 1st dimension. If you then connect those lines and create a house on a piece of paper, that's a 2-dimensional structure, or you can move that into a computer. Anything you see in a computer that looks 3D is actually 2D, right? So, and because we're in the 3rd, we can see down into 2D, we can see all the way down, obviously, into 1D, and we can manipulate those dimensions from our higher selves. Now, now there are beings in 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions, just people above us. Now, because of that, they see us and they recognize the past, present, and future operating all at the same time. Everything's happening at once.
Right.
There is no separation between the past, present, and the future. The arrow doesn't exist. Because they're higher than us, they can look down into the 3rd and they can see into what we're doing. So
who are before? Hey, we got to unpack a little bit. We got to unpack.
Okay.
It's high level, but I want to make sure that the people can follow along with it. So, you know, talking about 3rd dimension, right? You know, it's ants are not 3rd dimensional beings, right? Because they can't see upward, right? They're not horizontal. You understand me? They exist on a plane where they're looking forward, right? So when you're moving about the rest of the world that is higher up to them, they have no access to that, no perspective on that whatsoever. You understand me? For them, everything is straight and in front of them. For things, we have the ability to look upward, to look inward, to look outward, to look around, right? So therefore, we're connected into different angles, different perspectives, and different dimensions. You understand me? And then what I wanted to get with next though, so let's say we got the 3rd dimension, right? Now we're talking about the 4th dimension, right? What is the 4th dimension?
The 4th dimension is something called a tesseract. And if you go into the ancient text, it's Metatron's cube, meta, M-E-T-A, meta, obviously, the metaverse, right? They got that from Metatron's cube. It's a 4th dimensional substructure. Now, this 4th dimension is really something called a quasi-crystal. And this quasi-crystal in the 4th dimension it casts a shadow, and the shadow that it casts, it creates the realm that we're living in here. We're living in a shadow of a higher dimension. That shadow creates a third dimension. It actually creates a fractal of it, creates this fractal holographic matrix that we're actually maneuvering in the third dimension right now.
So would the fourth dimension be considered a dimension of time?
You can address a fourth dimension of time, like Albert Einstein was saying, if you're just looking at a third plus a fourth being the arrow. But when you actually move up into another dimension, we now know in quantum physics that there is actually a fourth dimension. So all dimensions are in 90-degree angles of each other. And according to quantum theory right now, we're really anticipating that there's at least 11 dimensions, or otherwise the universe would collapse. So there really is truly a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all the way up, not just the arrow of time. That's just something extra. They try to make it make sense back then by saying the fourth dimension is time, but time is actually not a dimension at all.
So now that's a very interesting, because it's a lot that I'm sure that everybody's like, all right, I thought I was smart, and then I tried to keep up, and then I got left behind. You understand me? And what I want to bring people up to speed. You understand me? And the ideas in correlation to the analogy of how we're moving as a collective human species, specifically with technology, right? Because I think it can be connected to, cellular technology, right? Going from 3G to 4G. And, going from 3G to 4G to 5G, which allows us to be able to do different things that we normally weren't able to do that weren't possible, right? Let's say you got 3G phones, it's helping you make better, faster calls, you understand me, connected. 4G, and you're talking about now applications and streaming, right? And Wi-Fi, right? Being able to connect within systems and the Internet of Things. And then 5G allowing completely new systems of possibility. And this was where I think a lot of people missed the point in 2020 where everybody's going through the craze of whether 5G was killing them or not. It was more so what was 5G going to do, right? So the NFTs and the Web3, right? And you're talking about, AR, VR, spatial reality, all these different things are not possible unless you have 5G being in connection. So it was representing a new world being produced outward. And it wasn't just an accident that NFTs came after the pandemic and this technology came after. There was something happening at that same point in time that for me, it was entering into a new phase of the world, a new dimension, a new speed, right? And that speed, can be known as time, if you will. And a lot of people without that ability to process at a high level, right? Like you got bandwidth, you got landline speed, you got Wi-Fi speed, you got 5G speed, you get left behind. So everything seems that it's moving fast, but that's only because you're not moving as fast. Everything stands still when you're moving at the same speed. You understand me? And so what I've always tried to do is keep people up to speed where we at in the dimension that we're currently in, or a little bit above, so you can be ahead of your time as a visionary. Because the fastest speed is the mind. You understand me? Being able to travel in your thoughts, right? That can take you into time, that can take you ahead of time, if you will. But the ideas of time itself, I love the concept that it being an illusion, because even the era with time is connected to language, right? That I wrote in my book about how when we speak in the English language, it's a very future tense reference, right? So we're always referencing the future as we speak. I will be there. I'm going to do this. And we have so many different phrases within the language. We're always pushing ourselves, not connecting to the present, but at a later point in day and time. You understand me? And I think that learning to be present connects us to the power that we have in control over. And then once you have that power, then you know how to create seeds that can control the rest of the time. But you said something about beings, right? Now, we always look at ourselves as people, but then when we talk about people, you're talking about human beings, right? The being part is not something that the average person understands, right? And then when you're saying that there are other beings, who are these other beings?
I believe personally, just based off of my research, and I've gone through now over 1,000 scriptures, texts, papyruses, cuneiform tablets from all over the world. They all have a very similar story. And all these ancient civilizations talk about beings, not just beings who came here from other planets, people that look like us and we look like them. We're, in other words, not identical, but very similar. In other words, a bilateral bipedal hominid of some type that can maneuver around, that has appendages that can manipulate the environment, because without that, you can't move out into space and other places. And they also talk about multidimensional. You get into like the non-commodity, stuff like that. You're talking about multidimensional beings. And so in physics, in quantum physics in particular, they started theorizing on these dimensions and were able to even analyze and discover some that they actually do exist. And on top of that, they realized that the dimensions are packed so tight on top of one another that if you can phase shift your atomic structure, your subatomic frequency, you can walk right into another dimension. And so they started postulating, what if beings from higher dimensions are some of these apparitions and these paranormal phenomena that we're seeing? Are they able to maybe take a glimpse or a peek? Are they phasing through into our universe? And so from higher dimensions. And so they started really theorizing it. It seems to be, and based on my research, that there's people living everywhere. Not just, and I'm not talking about little green men with antenna, I think that there's people living all throughout this universe in the third dimension, and I think there's people living all throughout even higher multiple dimensions, maybe at a certain level, a certain height in those dimensions. Maybe they don't have a real corporeal body.
Right, non-physical.
Non-physical, you know what I'm saying? But I believe that the consciousness is there.
Then that part is interesting, the non-physical aspect, because I understand that and I can believe in that idea and that concept. It's like, well, people think, I think of angels as angles.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because, you know, angels are supposed to exist in between dimensions.
Yeah.
You understand me? And angles, you understand me, are dimensions.
That's
right? And so it's like perspective is your angle in which you see things and view things. And oftentimes angels come and gives us new perspective, new thoughts. You understand me?
Yeah.
Arriving from a different, completely dimension of thought that we couldn't arrive at ourselves.
Correct.
You know, but at the same time, when you're talking about non-corporeal bodies or non-physical bodies, you understand me? I like that concept because when you're talking about time, you're talking about light, you're talking about all of these different ways in which light or energy can exist within, and consciousness, right? The awareness of, you know, output, you understand, mathematical output, right? Do you believe that the universe is mathematical?
Oh, absolutely. The language of God is mathematics, because mathematics can literally explain everything that we experience and everything also that exists. Even the fact that we're existing in a light matrix can be proven through mathematics. So we're living in a matrix that's basically written on mathematics called Adinkra codes. And these Adinkra codes go all the way back to the Dogons, Dogon tribes out of Mali, Africa. They actually originated these codes, and they were given these codes by the Nomo, and they learned them. They drew them out as art forms. But now, and they put them on clothing and blankets and everything else.
So the Dogon tribe, very interesting tribe, you know, that was able to discover, you know, systems before telescopes and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So how did they arrive to be able to, because I know a lot of people, I posted about this not too long ago, people want to understand how the hell did the Dogon tribe arrive to it? Right. I just subscribe to, you know, us being, you know, gods, melanated beings on this planet Earth. We connected in a way that we just don't understand anymore. You understand me? And being multi-dimensional, I think about physics in that aspect where you're talking about things being entangled. You know, not Will and Jada entanglements, you understand me? But quantum entanglements.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, once you understand that, being multidimensional to me is easily understood from the fact that you can break us down to atoms, right? And then cells, and then we get into our skin and we see our physical. But from an atomic level, those are different laws. Right. And we're made up of atoms. So that an aspect of our existence is obeying different laws of the universe. And then our cells are obeying different laws, gravity and magnetism, right, and flow. But then we as human beings are obeying different laws, right, of gravity and magnetism in the universe. And then we forget about the universal laws of our multidimensional self because we only know man's law.
Exactly.
You understand me? So I think being multidimensional is easily understood as above, so below. You understand me? But the idea of the Dogon people being able to chart systems, how were they able to figure that out? You understand me? Before the Europeans had an idea of what was out there.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, if you go all the way back to the ancient Dogon history, before they got to Mali, they were in the land of Kem. They were the original inhabitants of the land of Kem before it was called Egypt. And so
Kem meaning the land of blacks?
The land of blacks, correct. Exactly, land of blacks. Kem was black. It's all black. That's in the tablets.
So Kem, so there's so much Jews in here. But so in Kem, you understand me? That's Africa.
Yeah.
Right. I know everybody calls it Middle East as if
you know it's Africa. Man.
It's the Middle East is the most funniest made up concept, magical idea on the planet.
I know.
Because it's like you have in Africa, but no, this is like the Middle East Africa. It doesn't count for sub-Saharan Africa, Northern Africa, and East Africa. Like, but it's Africa, right?
It's Africa.
Yeah. So I mean, for those who don't
Cairo
know,
is in Africa.
Cairo's in Africa.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I know people still get it wrong till this day.
That's crazy.
It surprises me. But so they, according to their records and their handed down verbal history, their records are etched into caves and stuff like that. The Nomo came here from Sirius B. Okay, so there's a trinary star system that we know of called Sirius, the Sirius star system, A, B, and C. B is a failed star. In other words, it ran out of fuel, turned into a white dwarf. These beings were orbiting on a planet that orbited that star, according to the Dogon, not me. Came here, they're called the Nomo. The Dogon called them the Nomo. Taught them all about the star system, the orbital pattern, our entire solar system, the names, the shapes, the sizes, the colors of all the planets in our solar system, all the planetary alignments. And they even knew that that white dwarf star was so gravitationally heavy that one spoonful couldn't be lifted by over 1 million men. They even knew that. We learned that in quantum mechanics and quantum physics in the 1970s, 1980s. We hypothesized it. And obviously we couldn't even see that star until the 1980s, 1970s, sorry.
So when did they record it?
Thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
It's like, we're talking about over 6,000 to 7,000 years. They've had depictions of them and everything else, and they taught them how to make these Dogon masks, but they also gave them the Adinkra codes. And these Adinkra codes look like designs on clothing and patterns. When you turn these designs into three-dimensional structures, they become something called error correcting codes. And Professor James S. Gates, a black professor who used to be the science in supersymmetry and theoretical physics. He discovered these Adinkra codes. He rediscovered them, obviously, and he turned them into three-dimensional objects. And then from there, he found the error correcting codes. He was analyzing and accessing information about the ether of space-time, and he discovered that the entire ether, in other words, everything this soup that we're operating in throughout the entire universe, is running on a specific code. It's called an Adinkra code. It's called error correcting codes. The same exact kind of codes that run search engines and web browsers. That's what's running the universe.
So listen now. At certain points in time in the interview, the glasses got to come off. This was one of those points in time when we're talking about Adinkra codes and going into multidimensional aspects of thinking. You know,
File 100% free with TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of taxpayers qualify. Form 1040 and limited credits only. See how at turbotax.com. That's me!
This episode is brought to you by Goldwater.
But, you know, being connected to the stars, you understand me? And being connected to the universe is a very interesting aspect of thinking. You know, I grew up, you know, in the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
And the Nation of Islam, there is a lot of, you know, astronomical teachings, you know, about astronomy and sizes of the planets and distance. That was one of the first things we had to learn.
Wow.
Right? Where the distance between the planets, the speed of light, the speed of sound, right? You know, the total square mileage of the water, earth, land, mountains, rivers, lakes, right? Everything. So, you know, deep into the teachings of Elijah Muhammad is astronomy, right? He wasn't really into astrology because he said it was too much guesswork. But astronomy he was into because it was mathematical. And you're talking about, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, for a black man to be teaching astronomy, especially the poor black people in America. It was it was
like years ahead of time.
It was an interesting indication of, you know, where he got his knowledge. Because he had a third grade education, but he was teaching about astronomy. Right? And he would dare the scholars of the world to prove him wrong. Of course, none of them did, right? Because he was talking about Pluto back in those days before they would recognize Pluto, right? And I used to always think about why. And one of the last books that he wrote was called The Theology of Time.
Oh, wow.
And The Theology of Time it's not a book for the beginner, initiate. You understand me? It's definitely more novice when you get into your understanding. And then that's when he proposed and he talked about alien life on Mars, right? He talked about the different planets who can and who can't go there, what they were doing and building. Like, he has very detailed composition of thought on extraterrestrial life. You understand me? And the origins of the planet itself and the universe itself. You know, and it's very interesting because we often believe that our connection to, you know, the way that the Dogons were able to chart the stars is lost. Right? You know, but that knowledge has always been within our DNA and always been passed down within us. There's just certain keepers of that knowledge. Right? And those keepers of the knowledge are not often listened to because, especially today, we have a very static, distracted, low-level way of thinking. So it's like you have to think about the mind, and it's not even to say that they were the most intelligent people on the planet, but connected. You understand me as being different. Like, that's a different type of intelligence. Because we only measure academia or scholarship intelligence that you get from universities. But we don't measure the intelligence you get from the universe. You understand me? I want to talk about, you know, I don't want to leave time in the star system just yet, but I do want to talk about your relationship with astronomy and whether you believe astrology to be a true science or not.
Well, I'm actually an amateur astronomer.
Okay.
I've been doing that for a long time.
Yes, sir.
I have a real nice telescope. I have a Celestron SLR, and it's a real nice telescope. You can actually see the rings of Saturn. You can see Jupiter. You can see Mars. I took a famous picture that's been circulating for years of Mars during the summer. When you take a picture of Mars during the summer, it actually has green. It has blues. It's not a red planet. You can see that the ice caps are smaller, which means they've melted. There's a lot of liquid water on the planet, and a lot of those greens, I believe, is vegetation. You know, and now all the science data is coming back out from NASA. Now all of a sudden, press releases are coming out. The soil on Mars is better for growing crops than on Earth. Now they're saying this. Oh, there's billions of tons of liquid water on Mars now. You know, what
I can believe that.
And they're also talking about the fact that there's an atmosphere that is equivalent to being like 18,000 feet above sea level. But that's like going to Peru. I'm going to Peru in a few weeks, right? So same thing. You got to acclimate to that height, to that